Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching fifth and final part of What If Naruto Had a Sexy Vampire Bodyguard. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Naruto looked at his brother in arms dejectedly and said, dead serious. Gaara. If you don't step out of this office and enjoy the celebration like everyone else, I'll prank you so hard that your great-grandson will feel it. Gaara crossed his arms and gave his brother a defiant glare that was almost bloody. I can't, Naruto. I was absent from my position as Kazekage for 2 days. I must immediately begin my usual work EHTIC if I hope to even minimize my workload. The Kazekage with red hair replied. With a slight narrowing of his eyes, Naruto growled, Gaara, stop being so stubborn and just go enjoy the festival with everyone else. And pounded on Gaara's desk. Gaara quietly turned back to his chair and slowly stood up, saying, and I told you, I'm busy. You can't stay cooped up in here forever, Gaara. Why not? I don't sleep in the first place. With an almost smug smile on his face, Naruto shot back, even if you don't sleep, you still need to take a break. Stress is bad for your health, Gaara. But when Gaara sank back into his chair, that smile turned to a frown. Gaara. If you don't get your ass out of that chair, I'll drag you outside. The brunette said. Gaara crossed his hands and legs and raised a non-existent eyebrow, giving the blonde in front of him a stern look. With a twitch, Naruto lunged in the direction of the redhead. The blonde yelled, get out of that chair, damn it, and started a brawl with Gaara. Gazing at the wrestling pair across the room, Yui and Shiroi, who were lounging on the couch, exchanged deadpan looks. Shiroi remarked, her eye twitching slightly, they completely forgot we were here. Yui conceded, her eye twitching too. Yeah, I agree. The succubus said, her wings flexing slightly in annoyance and jealousy, I know it's selfish of me. But whenever I was with Gaara, he had his attention solely focused on me and his work. But now, his attention is trained only on your fiancé at the moment. Shiroi continued, her voice carrying a hint of jealousy as her twitch increased, I concur. Naruto. Kun never took his eyes off me when he was with me. Even when Jiraiya was teaching him some techniques, I noticed how his eyes would glance at me from time to time. And when he was on a mission, he would sometimes send a messenger toad to hand me some letters of his. But now, his attention is just focused on your boyfriend. When they saw the two boys were still wrestling, they both got even angrier and more envious. Having to share their respective men's attention was not something they were used to. In actuality, they would lock themselves and their man in a room if they could, where their man's entire focus would be on them alone. That's how possessive they were. Nevertheless, Yui acknowledged that Shiroi was slightly more possessive than she was. Ultimately, when they were younger, she did take quite a few of Shiroi's belongings. Shiroi became far more possessive than most people as a result of this. As Naruto and Gaara kept wrestling, their eyes twitched, and finally, they said enough was enough. Was sufficient. Enough. Both of them exclaimed. Naruto and Gaara stood motionless. Currently, Gaara's right leg was wedged squarely into Naruto's face, and his left hand was gripping a handful of the blonde's hair, while his right hand was holding the blonde by his robes. Naruto's right leg was securely encircling Gaara's right leg, while he grasped Gaara's cheeks with both hands and stretched them out. Both men wondered what the other was wanting as they confusedly glanced at their respective fiancés and girlfriends. You two get up! Exclaimed Yui. Naruto and Gaara hurried to follow her instructions and noticeably straightened up, resembling soldiers about to be given a task. Gaara gave a little yelp as Yui marched over to him and tightly gripped his ear. Is it clear that you are going to enjoy the celebration with me? She yelled. Silently, Gaara gave a nod, and Shiroi approached Naruto. Just like Yui, she took the blonde by the ear. And you're taking me to the festival too. Do you get it? She growled low. Naruto nodded, scared. Hey, maybe he was strong enough to defeat an S-ranked shinobi. He was not a fool, though. He was aware that when a woman gets angry, she somehow becomes extremely strong. Before dragging the two to the door leading outside, Yui and Shiroi both said, good. Naruto and Gaara both let out a low sigh. Naruto muttered to Gaara, Shikamaru was right. Women are troublesome. Gaara silently nodded. I agree. He answered. A death aura swirled around Yui and Shiroi as they both stopped abruptly and smiled at each other in a sickeningly sweet way. They both exclaimed, "Did you say something, boys?" As their menacingly flashing eyes matched. No, honey. Cried out in fear Gaara and Naruto. Once again, the girls said in unison, "That what we thought," and then they dragged their boyfriend, or, in Naruto's case, fiancé, out the door. Before giving each other a somber nod, the two boys could only exchange pitying glances. Someone gave it a nod. Who have conceded defeat? To be honest, Gaara did not anticipate having fun at the festival when he started to participate in the festivities. Taking into account his social awkwardness. After all, he has been the object of fear and mild animosity since birth. He was feared by everyone. They never saw a destitute boy in need of a friend. All that was visible to them was Ichibi the Shukaku, a Biju. When his uncle attempted to kill him, he turned into the monster they feared because they were afraid of the monster inside of him. And he killed for a long time without showing the slightest trace of regret. He might even claim that, for a while, he relished their deaths. Gaara had met Naruto earlier, though. The blonde had initially given the impression of being someone he would hate. A contented individual with the ideal life. However, Gaara discovered that the blonde and he were actually one and the same. Thus, the blonde greatly perplexed him. How could someone who resembled him be? Still have that happy smile on your face? Gaara realized something during that fight when Naruto claimed he had fought for those who were important to him. That the blonde had people to recognize him, which is why he was able to smile so genuine. And that was the distinction between the two of them. Gaara yearned for Naruto's level of strength. However, he was clueless about how to get that result. He was always so confused by bonding. He had no idea how to do it. But he started to form a genuine relationship with his elder siblings. And he was overjoyed that he and his siblings were growing closer and closer. He soon stopped being as awkward around his siblings. With others, though, it's a different story. He was an expert in handling political situations. However, with regular people? To be honest, he didn't know how to talk to them. So unless someone spoke to him, he would typically say nothing. That succeeded in making many Suna residents uneasy. But after he got to know Yui, he started talking to other Suna shinobi. Because Yui made him. In her words, not interacting with anybody in not healthy baka. As a result, he was forced to do so, and every day after that, his interactions with people became easier. Given Gaara's progress in social situations, it should come as no surprise that he and Naruto were having a somewhat. While they were playing a few games, they had an interesting conversation. Naruto absent-mindedly threw another blunted kunai at his target, saying, "I keep telling you Gaara, ramen is the way to go, it is the food of the gods." The two were engaged in a game of festival games in which the object you hit with a blunted kunai would become yours. Kids who aspired to be shinobi were big fans of this game. The blonde hit a perfect home run off of a plush bat. After offering the blonde the plush toy, the stand owner gave Naruto a small compliment. In spoken, the blonde accepted the plush toy and turned to face Gaara, sensing that the red-haired Kazekage would not let their conversation end. Gaara gave his fellow Jinchuriki a blank stare as he declared, "And I say that onigiri is the best delicacy there is." Naruto. With a shake of his head, Naruto gave Gaara the look that suggested the redhead had done something very wrong. "Obviously, you have not tasted the glorious dish that is ramen. We will need to rectify that. With haste." The brunette yelled. Before his eyes started searching wildly for a ramen store. The blonde searched in vain for a few minutes before casting a melancholy cloud over his head. He muttered, crying anime tears at the thought of not having ramen, "There's not a ramen shop anywhere." Yui, who had been quietly observing Gaara and Naruto's interaction, broke out into a cold sweat as soon as she saw what was happening. With a sidelong glance at Shiroi, she questioned, "Is your fiancé always like this?" While they were eating ice cream. Shiroi gave a little chuckle as she took in the scene in front of her. "Naruto has always had a peculiar taste in ramen," she retorted, her expression loving and affectionate. "You really do love him, don't you?" Yui asked, grinning. With a hint of hope, she said, "Maybe one day." Me and Gaara can have a double date with you and Naruto? Double dates were the ideal way to foster intimacy between potential future couples. It would resemble their own tiny family almost entirely. She found that to be a nice idea. Additionally, since they haven't seen each other in a while, it would give her some insight into her sister. Shiroi grinned and said, "Yeah. I would like that," licking her ice cream in response. Yui grinned, then realized that everything was too quiet. She realized what was wrong and was overcome with a sense of dread. "Shiroi. Where's Chachazero?" Raising one eyebrow, Shiroi said, "Chachazero is." But then stopped when it dawned on her that she had no idea where Chachazero was. "Where the fuck is Chachazero?" she asked, frowning thoughtfully. Yui exclaimed, her face filled with fear, "You mean you don't know where she is?" Shiroi raised a gentle eyebrow once more. "What's wrong with me not knowing where Chachazero is?" With her wings flapping frantically and her eyes glowing a bright yellow, Yui looked at her as if she had said something stupid. "Shiroi. Chachazero is an insane little doll that loves sharp things and blood. So tell me again, why having Chachazero alone somewhere in the village is not a bad thing?" Yui shouted. "Yes, I understand your point," Shiroi blinked, conceding, "but how am I supposed to know where Chan is?" A scared cry erupted from the clearing, and Yui closed her mouth after opening it briefly. All heads in the vicinity turned toward the source of the scream, only to see a giggling doll chasing Asuna Chunin as he frantically ran down the streets. With tears streaming down his face, the Chunin exclaimed, "Oh sweet Kami. Sama, please save me." The Chunin looked over his shoulder, and he let out a scream when he saw Chachazero's arm transform into an exact duplicate of Altair's. "Wait. I just want to see a tiny amount of blood," Chachazero begged, her cute smile giving the Chunin an innocent look. Though the situation's cuteness was entirely overshadowed by the bloodlust in her eyes. Chachazero suddenly gained speed, causing the Chunin to scream like a small child. The Chunin cried out in terror, "Oh please. Kami. Sama. I promise to be a good boy from now on," before running to the rooftops. With a fit of laughter, Chachazero exclaimed, "Yay. A race on the rooftops. Whoever wins gets to cut off the other person's limbs, okay," as the doll leapt up to the rooftops above her. The villagers were shocked and in disbelief at what they saw, and Yui was just staring blankly. Gaara's expression was expressionless, but his flickering eye told the others everything they needed to know. Along with Gaara, Naruto just regarded the scene with a black expression, but he secretly sighed in mild relief. "He's better than me," he concluded. She barely managed a deadpan expression before Shiroi's lips quirked upward. Yui asked in a questioning tone, "Shouldn't we do something about that?" For several minutes, Shiroi hummed to herself, "Nah." She shrugged and licked her ice cream idly. "But..." Shiroi cut her off, but she whispered the last part, "Don't worry, Chan is just having some fun. She won't go too far. I hope." For several more hours, the two Jinchuriki and their respective ladies relished the festivities, engaging in a variety of games and visiting food vendors. His fiancée, Jinchuriki, a blonde from Konoha, won gifts and prizes. The majority of them were items with a bat theme, like gloves, rings, and earrings. Loved by the gifts, Shiroi vowed to wear them going forward. The blonde's eyes lit up with love for the girl after she gave him a lovely, wet kiss on his whiskered cheek. Since most relationships never had arguments, Yui seemed amused by the couple and observed that when they did, it was usually just for amusement. She saw firsthand several times during the festival that they had a great deal of love for one another. For example, she would kiss the blonde's cheek or give her a direct kiss on the lips in response to the blonde giving her a gift. The succubus with black hair was pleased that her sister had found her ideal partner, just as she had. While it's true that Gaara was frequently aloof, Yui knew that Gaara loved her. Even though he had made great progress in social interactions, he was still a little reserved around other people. However, Yui didn't care about that. She had a deep affection for Gaara since she was a kind, compassionate, and caring person. Most were just unable to see past his emotionless exterior. With her eyes brightening at the thought of purchasing something for her beloved, Shiroi said, "Okay, Naruto. Kun. I think it's high time I buy something for you. Putting her white hair up in a high ponytail. For the rest of the evening, she had made the decision to pull her hair back into a ponytail. That's so, Shiroi. Chan? Naruto inquired, his face showing curiosity. He added afterthought, what will you buy, if I may be so bold to ask? Pulling the blonde along, Shiroi said, you said that during your fight with that Deidara guy, that you lost your hair ribbon. I'll buy you a new one, now come on. The majority of the villagers were taken aback by that, since it is uncommon to see a girl so little drag around a man who is nearly half her size. Look at them, Gaara, don't you think they look like an excellent couple? Yui said softly. Gaara noticed Naruto's cheerful expression, and he grinned a little. I concur, they are the most excellent couple I've ever seen. Of course, they are only second best compared to us. Gaara chuckled. With a mischievous smile, Yui pouted, Mo. I'm the one supposed to be doing the teasing. She slyly said, maybe I'm influencing you much more than you thought. With a tiny smirk on his face, Gaara said, keep dreaming, and then he and Yui strolled down the street together. Let's see, where can we find you a ribbon? Ideally one that won't be lost into the wind, as you explained, Shiroi thought as she peered through the windows of several stands and shops with pink slits in her eyes. Her eyes scanned the streets again, searching for the ideal ribbon, and she hummed. One that would be ideal for her fiancé, one that would fit him perfectly. All she would want for her fiancé was the best. Things of a lesser caliber are not even deserving of her fiancé's presence. She believed that Naruto only deserved the very best. Little things, like a particular village she disliked, with a select few people shielded from her wrath, were strictly forbidden from affecting her love. Discouraging to find nothing that would suit the blonde well, she gritted her teeth. Really, she understands that the village wouldn't have had many fine clothes because it was in the desert. However, did they really have to be that cheap? The girl with white hair was about to start glaring at any creature in her vicinity when she noticed the most astounding thing she had ever seen. A gorgeous ribbon with a single silver streak running through the center that is reddish orange in color. Its texture seemed soft, smooth, and robust, and its silk seemed to have been crafted from the finest of all. Even at a glance, she could tell that the ribbon was much stronger than it appeared. The texture didn't wrinkle even when it blew in the wind. Her eyes gleamed. She located it. The ideal present for her fiancé. She took her fiancé by the hand and led them to the ribbon, saying, Naruto. Kun. This way. The blonde Jinchuriki let his fiancé guide him to the stand, where he peered inquisitively at the assortment of goods that were on display. As he waited for the stand's owner to notice them, Shiroi said, Excuse me, sir. The old man put down his book and looked at the couple, saying, Yes? He asked, his elderly face wearing a warm smile. How may I help you? Glancing at the ribbon, the white-haired girl inquired, That ribbon, how much is it? The old man hummed for a while before turning to face the girl with white hair. Well, normally it would just be 100 ryo. But, seeing given its origins, it would be at about 3,000 to 4,000. He replied. Why so much? Shiroi questioned, and Naruto scowled at her. The old man said, drawing Naruto's attention, Well, the story about this ribbon is quite the interesting one. This ribbon was found in that strange tomb in the desert. You see, the tomb that's in the desert is a strange one indeed. Everyone who's ever gone to that tomb has never returned unscathed. I myself went to try and explore that tomb with a few shinobi. For my own safety, the shinobi asked me to remain at the camp. I listened, and shortly after they left for the tomb. Several hours later they returned, only they were extremely exhausted. When I asked what was wrong, they told me that the second they stepped foot in that tomb, it felt like their chakra was leaving their bodies. So clearly, they were suffering from severe chakra exhaustion. The older gentleman clarified. Naruto pondered what he had heard, lost in thought. Out in the desert, a tomb, huh? What are the chances, Kyubi, that this is Uzumaki Arashi's tomb? The blonde one inquired. The chances are very high, Naruto. Although, you can use Altair to guide you to the tomb's location. The Kyubi replied. How may Altair assist? With a curious glance at the blade, Naruto inquired. When Arashi created Altair, he made sure to place quite a bit of his own chakra into the blade. In a sense, if Arashi's lingering presence is anywhere in this world, then you can bet your ass that Altair is gonna sense it. The huge fox clarified. With an inward nod, Naruto turned his attention to what was going on in front of him. There must be some other reason as to why it costs so much. Shiroi said. You have a sharp mind, don't you? Yes, there is another reason. You see, everyone I've ever sold this to has returned it the very next day, the elderly man said, laughing. What do you mean? Inquired Naruto. They say that they feel as if they were getting weaker, and weaker with each time they kept that ribbon on their person. Some people say it's cursed. The older gentleman said with a slight frown. As the blonde started speaking, Shiroi hummed and was ready to drag Naruto to another stand. The blonde Jinchuriki said, I'll take it. Shiroi looked at Naruto, but the older man raised an eyebrow and the blonde just winked at her. The owner of the stand asked, Are you sure, lad? The blonde nodded silently. Well. Since we are celebrating Sama's return, I guess I can lower the price. But for such a lovely couple, I'll the price a little more. 2,000 ryo please. Shiroi gave the man the money without saying anything, and he gave her the ribbon in return. The blonde received a brilliant smile from the white-haired girl, but her eyes were filled with concern. She asked softly, Naruto, turn around so I can tie it around your hair. The blonde turned around and sat down on a nearby bench without saying anything. Shiroi glared at the ribbon, whispering, If you do anything to harm him, I'll destroy you. After threatening the blonde, the white-haired girl wrapped the ribbon around her hair, arranging it in a low ponytail. Shiroi said in a whisper, Your hair is still so soft and beautiful. The blonde felt her heated breath tickle her skin. He smiled at the blonde, who shivered with slight arousal. Thank you, your hair is also very soft and beautiful. He replied. With a flirty smirk on her face, Shiroi said, You flirt. I'll make sure to deal with that arousal of yours tonight. Her nose detected her fiancé's arousal. With her pink, slitted eyes fixed on the blonde, she asked, But for now, do you feel any different? To be quite honest, the blonde Jinchuriki hummed for a while. He experienced no emotion. It seemed as though this supposedly cursed ribbon would do him no harm at all. That ribbon. Why'd I get the feeling it's way too familiar? But why can't I remember what it was used for? Yet. I also feel so calm now. Kyuubi spoke quietly. Altair gave a little twitch. Without acknowledging the Kyuubi's words, the blonde Jinchuriki remarked, It's not doing anything at the moment. In fact, I feel just fine. That's good, Shiroi said, smiling, Now come on, we got a festival to enjoy. As she held onto the blonde's arm, gesturing himself around by his fiancée, Naruto laughed. The two spent many more hours enjoying the festival, trying out different foods, playing games, and occasionally engaging in ninja activities with the festival's young attendees. The two of them ran into Kakashi, who was holding two girls in his arms. After greeting the gray-haired Jonin, who responded enthusiastically to their arrival, the two girls gripping his arms started dragging him away for what they called fun. There was no doubt in the two minds that Kakashi was grinning broadly. Not that his mask allowed them to see. Sakura, who was taking part in a strength competition, was also encountered by the two. As she and Shiroi looked at each other, the tension in the room seemed to grow. And Naruto only gave Sakura a courteous but neutral greeting before escorting Shiroi to further explore the festival. However, Naruto mentally noted that he needed to talk to Tsunade about Sakura as soon as possible. They happened upon Temari, who was competing to see who could manipulate the wind the strongest. Given that Naruto's primary element was wind, Shiroi proposed that he participate. The blonde consented since he was eager to compare his abilities to those of another wind user. The blonde ultimately prevailed in the competition, but he also gained a great deal of experience with his wind nature after realizing that Temari and other competitors could help him advance his wind nature. Which, to be honest, they were all having trouble mastering. The blonde was confident that he would become an expert in this field very quickly because of his natural talent in shadow clones. The pair then encountered Konkuro, who had been healed of the poison inside of him, who was fiddling around the village's puppet shops. The blonde had spoken with the makeup wearing Jonin right away, and they both listened as Konkuro gave them a lecture about the horrible conditions some of the puppets, in the shops he visited, were in. One of the most powerful tools in a puppeteer's arsenal was a puppet. That puppet user was not a master at all if their puppets were poorly maintained and in bad shape. When Konkuro started talking animatedly with another puppeteer, the two started to perspire, and they slowly left the set wearing Jonin. Following a few minutes of aimless meandering, the pair eventually came across Chacha once more. She was pursuing the Chunin, but she was also playing catch with him. They were using a pretty sharp kunai to play catch. Additionally, there were numerous scratches on the Chunin, some of which had blood leaking through them. The Chunin also had a terrified expression on his face as his eyes darted all over the place, seemingly searching for a gap in which to slip away. Though Naruto made sure to gently chastise Chacha and warn her not to kill the man, the two agreed to let Chan enjoy herself. The tiny doll gave a happy nod, then returned to her game, albeit with more restraint. Despite this, the doll continued to giggle uncontrollably. But now the blonde was lying down on his bed, and Shiroi was straddling his waist, grinning and licking her lips. Shiroi, licking the blonde's neck, said, "I hope you're ready, Naruto-kun, because right now, you're all mine." As she made her way up, the blonde softly grumbled, planting several kisses on the white-haired girl's neck. "Shiroi-chan, how come you're always on top?" With a low moan in his ear, Shiroi bit the blonde's earlobe and said, "I love to dominate Naruto-kun, you should know this." The blonde gave a small gasp, then let out a moan as she bit it with the greatest pleasure. His hand sank into her shirt as he whispered, "I know you love to dominate, that's why I always let you be on top, most of the time." As Naruto undid her bra and started massaging her breasts, Shiroi trembled with pleasure. With a gasp, "Damn your skill hands." A grin on her countenance. She covered the blonde's mouth, and she planted a passionate, hot kiss on her. There were little slurps made as they exchanged saliva. Shiroi sensed her instincts taking over again, and the kiss turned more feral and animalistic. They exchanged a passionate French kiss, her eyes taking on a wild sparkle. A few minutes later, the two parted ways, with a trail of saliva connecting their lips as they panted a little. The blonde started to suck on Shiroi's neck after the girl licked the trail of saliva and caused it to snap. With a gasp, Naruto started to caress her breasts with more passion and gradually lifted her shirt. The blonde bestowed a menacing grin on the white-haired vampire, who groaned as Naruto's hands caressed her bosom. She moved her hands to the top of his pants and whispered softly, "I want you so much right now." With his own hands moving to her pants, the blonde asked huskily, "What about foreplay?" "I want you now." "Fuck foreplay," the girl angrily exclaimed, before undressing the blonde. Naruto laughed and said, "So impatient." The blonde turned them over so that he was on top, saying, "But I agree, foreplay can go to hell right now." He muttered, "But I get to be on top." Having said that, he assisted the girl in taking off their clothes, and as they made love, their world was flooded with intense pleasure. As previously stated, I'm not into doing whole lemons. I might do a little lime here and there, but not a whole lemon. Maybe in later chapters if I'm comfortable enough. Shiroi was soundly sleeping next to Naruto when he planted a kiss on her cheek. Her face was still a little bit sweaty, and her white hair was in a disheveled jungle. However, that was to be expected because they continued for a few rounds before ending the evening. The blonde sent her a farewell kiss prior to rising from the bed and donning his robes. The blonde took out all of his weapons, securing them on his person in their proper locations, then he sheathed Altair and opened the window. Shiroi received one last smile from the blonde before he leapt out the window. The blonde leapt across the rooftops rather quickly, but he slowed down as soon as he sensed something grabbing the cocktails in his robes. "Hi Naruto." "Chama." Chacha cried out, letting go of the cocktail made from the robes to settle herself on top of the blonde's head. The blonde said, "Chan. Where were you?" he inquired. With a voice so innocent and sweet that Naruto had to fight the urge to cuddle the doll, she said, "I simply started wandering around because I forgot where the apartment was." However, her tone was just too innocent. He said, "You killed something, didn't you?" "Perhaps," the tiny doll replied. "What did you kill?" sighed Naruto. Pointing her tiny fingers at a twitching lizard that was lying on the ground covered in blood, Chacha exclaimed, "A really big lizard." But before it knew it, a knife was stuck in its neck, stopping its twitching. The blonde Jinchuriki blinked, then turned to face Chacha, who was holding out her arm. "Was that really necessary?" "Yes," was her response. The blonde just let out a sigh and started walking back towards the Cage's building. Chacha inquired, "Where are we going?" Naruto replied, "To meet with Gaara." "Why?" "I need to speak with him." "Why?" "It's about something important." "What is it about?" "It will probably just bore you, Chan." Okay. With nothing better to do, the small doll got herself tangled in Naruto's hair while playing around. With a giggle, the doll started to untangle herself and continued to do so repeatedly. Sighing, Naruto did not stop the small doll. The green-haired doll perched on his head amused him, if nothing else. The blonde leapt on the balcony of the Cage's office after vaulting over a few more rooftops. Silently, the blonde unlocked the glass door and went inside. In the dimly lit office, a blank voice said softly, "Hello, Naruto." Its deep tone broke the silence. The blonde looked at Gaara, who was jotting down notes on some papers in silence. The blonde wondered to himself if he should share with Gaara the trick to beating paperwork. The blonde opened his mouth to say hello to the redhead, but Gaara gestured across the room with his fingers to keep him silent. Raising an eyebrow, the blonde focused his attention on the person with black hair who was soundly dozing off on the couch. A blanket over her body as it slept. When the blonde saw that Yui was the one dozing on the couch, he laughed. With a low tone of voice, the blonde opened his mouth to speak. He sat on a chair at the other end of Gaara's desk and said quietly, "Hey Gaara." With a blank expression, the red-haired Cage scribbled silently on a few more documents before turning to face his Jinchuriki brother. Gaara leaned back in his chair and asked, crossing his arms, "Is there something you need, Naruto?" "I might add, a very comfortable chair." The blonde replied, "I came to gain your permission on something." Raising an eyebrow, Gaara asked, "And that would be?" "I want your permission to explore the desert and search though a certain tomb that your villagers found." The Cage with red hair widened his eyes. "Why would you want to search though that tomb? If I'm not mistaken, you should have heard about the rumors that hover about that tomb. Especially since everyone who has ever entered has either been hospitalized or died of chakra exhaustion," he said. Naruto said, calmly staring into Gaara's sea-green eyes, "I know about that. But this is important to me." Gazing intently at the blonde, Gaara asked, "Why is it important to you?" With no other motive than blood, the blonde Jonin replied, "That tomb may belong to an ancestor of mine. By the name of Uzumaki Arashi, the first head of the Uzumaki clan." "I see, so this is a chance for you to have something of value." "That belongs to you by birthright," Gaara said, her eyes softening slightly. The blonde nodded silently. And the Jonin in the robes hoped Gaara would allow him to explore the tomb. Gaara closed his eyes for a few seconds, then snapped them open. "Here," the redhead shot the blonde a fierce glance. "Very well, I will allow it. However, you better come back in perfect condition. If you come back with even a scratch on you, then I will bury you in a sand tsunami." "Understood?" he insisted. Naruto laughed and gave a playful salute. "Yes, sir. Cage. Sama," he exclaimed, projecting the voice of a soldier facing his final conflict. With a tiny smile on his face, Gaara said, "That is Gaara to you, Naruto." Before leaving our office in the same manner that he had arrived, Naruto laughed and said, "I'll make sure to bring you a souvenir." Gaara took a few moments to study his glass door before turning back to his paperwork. Feeling the breeze through his office door, he muttered, "The least you could have done was close the door." The blonde was jumping over the rooftops with Naruto, and Chacha was racing across them while holding onto his robes. But when he noticed something white land in front of him, he abruptly stopped. The white figure asked, "Where do you think you're going?" When the clouds broke, Shiroi's figure was illuminated by the moonlight, her long white hair blowing in the breeze. Her rosy eyes focusing on the blonde. Although she was wearing her nightgown, beneath it she had on one of Naruto's black shirts and another item of the blonde's apparel, a pair of black shorts. "Hey Shiroi." Chan. The blonde exclaimed with joy. With her hands on her hips, the white-haired girl looked at her fiancé. That look was familiar to Naruto. It said, "I'm going to beat the living daylights out of you if you don't tell me where you're going." The blonde swallowed. She said, emphasizing the final 4 words, "You didn't answer my question, Naruto-kun. Where are you going?" After letting out a sigh, Naruto's expression turned serious. "I'm going to be investigating that tomb we heard about earlier today." Glaring at the blondes, the white-haired girl asked, "And why would this tomb be of importance to you?" Finally, the blonde said, "The tomb belongs to Uzumaki Arashi." The tomb caused Shiroi's eyes to widen. "Belong to Altair's creator?" She said softly, "I see. So that's why you want to visit the tomb." She realized that the contents of the tomb represented both Naruto's Uzumaki birthright and a way to strengthen his ties to his family. The white-haired vampire girl said, her eyes a little downcast, "You know. Normally I would ask if I can come along. But something tells me that you want to do this alone. Don't you?" Her chin rose as a result of a hand reaching her chin and meeting Naruto's eyes. "I need to do this alone, Shiroi-chan. I suspect that the tomb will only accept those of Uzumaki blood. And right now, I'm the only person who has even a chance to truly explore the tomb. Also, I have a feeling that I'm going to meet someone," the brunette said, staring at his partner. With a sigh, Shiroi maintained eye contact with the blonde. The blonde would understand her threat if she said, "Fine, but you better come back in perfect condition." "Understood. If not, I understand, Shiroi-chan. Not one scratch will be on my body when I return," he replied. Shiroi said, giving a small, contented nod of her head. "Good." After pressing his lips to Shiroi's, Naruto kissed her for a few moments before the blonde withdrew. "Cha-chan," he said, causing Chacha Zero to become excited. The blonde said, "Keep Shiroi-chan company while I'm away." "Okay. Naruto. Chama," exclaimed the small doll with green hair as it hopped on Shiroi's head. After saying, "I'll be back once I'm done exploring the tomb," Naruto quickly vanished, blurring his form. Shiroi gazed at the location where Naruto was, then she put her hand to her stomach and groaned angrily. "Is there a problem, Shiroi-chama?" Chacha Zero inquired. "It's nothing. It's just that my stomach feels a little weird," the woman said, waving Shiroi away. The blood-obsessed doll tilted her head cutely and said, "Maybe Shiroi-chama should go to a doctor?" "No. I hate doctors. Them, and their pointy objects. Not to mention they speak to people as if they were idiots." Shiroi hissed, her lips pulling back into a snarl. She could not remember the last time she had visited a doctor. She detested them. He was talking to her like she was an idiot, and she did not like it. That's why the villagers, mysteriously, discovered his lifeless body in his office. Being treated like an idiot when speaking to her bothered her. I'll sum it up here. The girl with white hair decided to stop thinking about these things, turned around, and started walking back towards her rented apartment. It would be fine with Naruto. In the end, he kept his word. As he trudged through grain after grain of sand, Naruto moaned. Several hours have passed since he left Suna and commenced his exploration of the desert under Altair's guidance. After walking through this godforsaken desert for several hours, not a single landmark was visible. After traveling through this sandy desert for several hours and dodging numerous dangerous animals, nothing has changed. The blonde was growing irritated fast, and he growled when sand started to get inside his boots. Yes, if this continues, it appears that the blonde might develop a newfound dislike for sand. The blonde moaned a little. "Altair, anything?" With a neutral expression belying his irritation. It was ineffective, as Kyuubi smirked subtly at the blonde. The blonde let out a frustrated sigh as the sheathed blade pulsed out a negative. "For the love of all that is holy. Please Kami-sama, help me find this tomb. So I can get out of this Kami-forsaken desert already." He was grumbling. Kyuubi muttered, "You know, complaining about this isn't gonna help any." His tail was swaying idly as his eyes were aimlessly looking through his container eyes. Then, would you mind giving some guidance? The blonde shot back, so that I can stop my complaining, as you put it. The big, multi-tailed fox moaned for a little while before saying, I don't have to kit. We are almost there anyway. What are you trying to say? Naruto inquired incoherently. But the blonde's response came in the shape of Altair abruptly rattling in its sheath as waves of excitement were being sent her way. After a brief moment of stumbling, the blonde managed to free Altair from its sheath and felt the blade start to literally drag him forward. After allowing the blonde to be pulled along by the blade for a few moments, a sizable structure came into view. It was a big structure that resembled a temple, with rusted walls and broken doors. The structure easily eclipsed the Konoha Hokage Tower. But the whole place appeared completely destroyed, as though it had endured a horrifying and brutal attack that lasted for many days and nights. At the entrance of the temple-like structure stood two massive statues. The one on the left appeared to be an armored shinobi from ancient times, complete with armored legs, gauntlets, and chest plate. Unlike the armor worn by Senju Tobirama, Senju Hashirama, and Uchiha Madara, judging covered the man's back and chest. And last but not least, a circular-shaped helmet. At the top was only something that appeared to be fur. Armor from the Brotherhood of Assassin's Creed. The only distinguishing feature on the second statue's armor was the addition of a cape. Kyuubi said, Yep. This is the place. Was this? Yes. These statues were of the Uzumaki of old. The first generation of the Uzumaki clan. The cape represents that of the rank Jonin, while the other simply represents a rank of Genin. The huge fox clarified. With an expression of wonder on his face, Naruto exhaled, amazing. The blonde started climbing the temple's steps and exclaimed, This is the first generation of the Uzumaki clan. As he reached the top, the temple appeared even bigger than it had before. The blonde put his hand on one of the shattered doors, closed his eyes, and let the sensation linger in his mind. It's amazing to think that this temple has endured for so long. It was astounding. Still, the evidence was there in front of him. The blonde took a deep breath, steeled his nerves, and stepped into the temple. The blonde entered the temple and felt his chakra begin to leave his body almost immediately. He dropped to his knees on the ground, and the blonde gasped. He sensed that his chakra was fading and getting weaker. Fuck. Kit. This place is full of. The blonde felt his bond with the enormous fox wane as the terrified Kyuubi's voice was muffled. The fox was still very much a part of him. However, all communication with Kyuubi was temporarily cut off. Naruto was experiencing extreme panic for the first time in his life due to his inability to communicate with the Kyuubi. The blonde felt his chakra fading more and more, so he gritted his teeth. The blonde clenched his jaw and raised his head. The blonde had trouble keeping his head up, but other than that, nothing was wrong. The blonde raised his head and looked at the interior of the temple. His eyes grew wide as he took in what was in front of him. Dozens of seals. No. The walls, floors, and ceilings of the temples were covered in hundreds, if not thousands, of seals. Still, what really drew his attention to the seals was their particular kind. The seals were exceedingly intricate, even for the most knowledgeable seal specialists. The seals could only be properly identified by a true seal master. Fortunately, Naruto was a seal master. Even though he wasn't as good as Jiraiya, he was still in the same league. Additionally, there were seals for chakra suppression and absorption engraved on the temple's exterior. Intended to absorb and suppress all available chakra, with the intention of using it inside the temple. Additionally, based on the intricacy of the seals, it appears that their purpose was to absorb and suppress a sufficient amount of chakra to defeat a Biju comparable to the Kyuubi. Biting into his hand, the blonde pursed his lips. Blood splattered on the ground, and the chakra absorption seals were deactivated, but the suppression seals remained active due to the Uzumaki blood in his veins. The blonde gasped as he felt his chakra come back to him, but he knew that as long as he was inside the temple, where the seals were still in place, his chakra would remain suppressed. The blonde stood, and he attempted to make contact with the Kyuubi inside of him, but the attempt was quickly thwarted. Naruto sighed, assuming that was the case. The blonde took a few moments to look around before starting to walk through the temple's hallways. The blonde saw that even though the hallways were covered in dust, rust, and decay, they were still in good condition. They remained robust and sturdy. The blonde came to a stop in front of a sizable room with an open space after a few minutes. But the floor in front of him was utterly destroyed, leaving a wide void that appeared to have no bottom. It would have been easy to navigate this with chakra. However, the suppression seals rendered all chakra usage essentially meaningless. As the robed Jonin considered how he would bridge this gap, he caught sight of movement out of the corner of his eye. When the young Jinchuriki turned around, he saw the same man that he had before his brief altercation with Kisame. But this time, instead of being there physically, he was an astral image. The red-haired man looked at Naruto and appeared to give the blonde a sly smile. Then, to Naruto's surprise, the translucent man turned to face the opening and started sprinting toward it. The man leapt and managed to pull himself up by grabbing onto a wooden beam that protruded from the walls. After that, the man leapt over the other beams and softly landed on them with his feet. When he got to the final beam, the man performed an acrobatic flip on it and grabbed onto a rusted pipe. Like bar. The man then started to swing between the pipes like a child on a monkey bar by using his other arm to grab hold of another pipe. The man leapt off the last set of bars with style, landing on the other side of the gap after grabbing onto it and spinning vertically. The ghost-like man spun around and grinned at the blonde, as though to say, "Beat that." With a scowl, Naruto leapt to the first ledge and carried out the red-haired man's moves again. The blonde did, however, have a few near misses and nearly fell several times. Still, the blonde did fairly well all around. All he had to do was hop over to the monkey bars and swing like the man with the red hair did. That was what the blonde did too, though he did not land on the other side with the same grace as the old Uzumaki. Still, it made no difference, and the blonde continued walking through the temple. Strolling down the second set of corridors, the blonde relished the sensation that he was back in his ancient's temple. He was ecstatic and had a strong sense of belonging in this place. There was also a strong sense of belonging in Uzushiogakure. But this place made that feeling 10 times stronger, for whatever reason. Idly wondering why this temple has never been discovered over the years, the Jinchuriki of Konoha waved those thoughts aside when he noticed a doorway up ahead. The youthful Jinchuriki halted and scrutinized the door, at which point he observed a skeleton beneath it. When he said that it appeared to be cut in half, the blonde winced. After glancing around for a while, Naruto saw the red-haired man's astral form emerge once more, but this time there were 2 other people behind him. The one on his left side was wearing armor that resembled the one he had seen the statue outside the temple, but it was shiny black instead of black. Its chest plate protruded a little, resembling a raven's wings. Behind him, a frayed black cape with the Uchiha crest, proudly displayed on the man's cape back, caught the blonde's attention, and his eyes grew wide. The blonde immediately recognized the similarities between this man and the Uchiha of today as soon as he glanced at the man's black hair and onyx black eyes. The other man had the same type of armor as the ancient Uchiha, but it was a forest green color instead of black, and it appeared to have small spiked shoulder blades and an engraved boar's face. He also had black hair, but his eyes were a forest green color. He too wore a cape, but this one was shiny white instead of torn, with the Senju crest displayed on it with pride. Based solely on appearances, Naruto deduced that these were 2 ancient Uchiha and that their significance was apparent. The blonde turned to face the red-haired Uzumaki, and to his surprise, he was dressed differently than the 2 previous times he had seen it. The armor consisted of stylized metal plates across his torso. The left arm guard was lowered to accommodate a black cape with a red interior, while the upper right arm guard extended higher than the shoulder. Each hand had leather gloves on in addition to the armor's matching bracers. On the bright white cape, a sort of Uzumaki swirl was proudly worn. The Assassin's Creed Brotherhood's Helmschmied Drachen armor. I'm glad the 2 of you accepted my offer of a peace treaty. I only wish it would last at least long enough for us to truly mend our friendship. The man with red hair replied. Silence, Arashi. I only agreed to come because we were good friends before the war. If I had known a Senju were to be participating, I would have never have come. The ancient Uchiha argued. You're so cold. Kyosuke. Arashi said as a melancholy cloud passed over his head. The Senju standing next to the Uchiha smirked and said, "Now look at you, what did Kyosuke? You know Arashi has a depression problem." Kyosuke gave the Senju a fierce look and said, "Shut it, Ichigo. You are already on thin ice with me." The Uchiha used his Sharingan to make a cold statement. The man's Sharingan, on the other hand, underwent a distinct metamorphosis, and it now had 7 spiked triangles on the tip of the iris, all pointing in the direction of the pupil, even though there wasn't one to begin with. There are just 3 tiny tomatoes instead of the pupil. "I do not care for your words, Kyosuke." Ichigo scowled at Kyosuke, revealing the infamous wood style of the Senju clan as wood started to take shape around him. The two appeared to be about to fight, but Arashi suddenly unleashed a massive wave of killing intent upon them, causing their eyes to widen with fear, causing them to immediately stop fighting and turn to stare fearfully at Arashi. "I invited you two here, so that we may enjoy our newly formed friendship. Not to see you two fight over a trifle matter like little children. If you intend to fight, then I will kill the two of you regardless of our friendship. I don't care if you fight outside this temple. But remember, members of my clan live here. If you intend to fight here, then I'll kill you. Understood?" Arashi said sternly. Senju nodded, the two old Uchiha nodding silently. "Good." At that moment, the tense atmosphere disappeared, and Arashi's face lit up with joy. "Leave now. I'm craving some ramen," exclaimed the first Uzumaki clan head, who then took hold of a lever and pulled. Their astral images vanished as they made the door open. Naruto's expression was one of shock and surprise as he observed the vanishing astral images. If the old Uchiha and Sinu's response to Arashi's display of strength was any indication, it appeared that they were terrified of him. The blonde noticed right away how rusty the door's lever seemed to be as she peered at it. The lever appears to be much older than when it was first used. The door, ancient as it was, opened miraculously when the blonde pulled the lever. The blonde blinked as he stared at the now broken lever, but it had broken out of its place. Then he focused on the door that was closing at that moment. Naruto exclaimed, "Oh hell no." After saying that, the blonde dashed to the closing door, and he slid beneath it in time to see it close. Naruto stood, sighing, and scowled down the hallway. The blonde started to run down the hallway at such a fast pace that his form almost disappeared, and the Jinchuriki narrowed his eyes at his destroyed looks that pointed to the upper floor. The blonde initially considered using chakra to get over this barrier, but then realized that he was currently out of chakra. With a sigh, Naruto started running up the wall vertically without using chakra to secure his feet to the wall. He started to fall quickly, but just in time, the blonde reached out and extended his hook blade, allowing him to hook it onto the ledge. With a sigh of relief, he got himself up. After a few minutes of jogging down the next corridor, the blonde entered a large room that was divided into 4 areas. He was unable to make out what appeared to be a strange symbol on the floor in the center, even though it was peculiar. If he put them back in the right order, it would resemble. When Naruto realized this, his eyes grew wide, and he began searching for a way to rearrange the symbols on the ground. The blonde found exactly what he was looking for with his keen eyes. Alternatively, the pair of items he sought. There were 2 levers in the room that could be pulled to the left and right, but getting to them would prove to be more difficult than expected. With a sigh, the Kyuubi Jinchuriki turned to face the right, resolving that this would be his debut performance. Naruto was wondering how he would approach this when all of a sudden Arashi's astral image materialized once more. The man with the spiky hair gave the blonde another sneer before sprinting up a wall. To Naruto's astonishment, he launched himself off the wall and grabbed onto a large object that was suspended. After pulling himself up onto the wood, the man leapt off and grasped the ledge. The red-haired man stood up and winked at Naruto before his form vanished. Naruto squinted, staring at the man with narrowed eyes. The blonde did as the man had done, though he almost slipped a couple of times. When he eventually reached the top, he sighed and turned to look around for the lever he needed to pull. After finding it, he swiftly pulled the lever, causing one of the pieces in the center of the room to swirl on the floor. Half of the Uzumaki swirl's symbol was formed before it stopped. It was time to let the other half figure things out on its own. He proceeded to the second puzzle piece after the blonde leapt to the ground. Naruto broke out in a cold sweat when he saw the next piece and realized he would have to scale a whole wall to get to his destination. He let out a sigh and realized how much he had been missing his chakra. The blonde smiled as Arashi's astral image materialized once more. The ancient Uzumaki bolted towards the wall, snatching hold of a narrow ledge and holding fast. The man had to push himself up several times before he finally reached the top. The long-haired Uzumaki then leapt onto a fractured railing, swung around to the other side, grabbed hold of another ledge, and stood up. The man made his last leap, caught hold of the last ledge, hauled himself up, and his astral image vanished. With a sigh, Naruto continued his ancestor's actions. It wasn't as simple as it seemed, though, and the blonde had to stumble a few times due to his lack of practice using this movement technique, but he managed to succeed. Even so, it took him a few minutes to execute it sufficiently. Now that he had completed his task, the blonde pulled the lever. Before it completed the Uzumaki swirl, the final piece on the floor in the middle started to move. Beside it, a hidden staircase was unlocked. After realizing there was no way for him to get down, Naruto moaned to himself for a while until he caught sight of Arashi leaping off a beam in his astral form. With a shrug, the Jinchuriki leapt from the same balcony. Just to crash into a pile of hay? As he emerged from the haystack, Naruto blinked and wondered absently how he had missed the damn thing all these years. With a shrug, the blonde descended the hidden staircase and, after a few minutes, found himself in the biggest room he had ever seen. It appeared to be one enormous library, though. The most peculiar aspect was the complete absence of books. Even with that said, the shelves were as empty as a corpse's eyes. Then, Naruto's focus moved to a single chair in the room, which had a skeleton sitting on it wearing only white robes. To Naruto's surprise, the room started to glow and the dust started to disappear. It appeared as though the room was fixing itself. Naruto came to the realization that he was about to witness another scene from antiquity. With his bleeding heavily, Arashi staggered into the room that resembled a library, clutching his side with his hand. There were distant shouts, the sounds of battle, and the room trembled. Arashi almost toppled over, but he refused to give up and staggered back into the room. Blood stained his free hand that held Altair and the silver blade. The ancient Uzumaki knelt down and uttered, "Kyubi. Sama. Please, answer my prayers." In a beseeching tone. The enormous fox strode into the room that could accommodate his form, and the Kyubi's ever massive form said, "How many times must I tell you, Arashi? I am no deity." Interestingly, one of the enormous fox's claws had a small ribbon wrapped around it. The enormous fox gave Arashi's bleeding form a sad glance before hardening his eyes. Arashi begged, bowing his head, "Please, Kyubi. Sama. I know I have no right asking this. But please, protect my clan while they retreat out of this place." "What is happening out there?" Kyubi asked, narrowing his eyes. "The Kagaya and Hazuki clans have joined together to try and kill me, Ichigo, and Kyosuke while we had our peace talks as I've told you last time. The attack was unexpected and they managed to surprise us. Right now, my clan, along with few dozen Uchihas and Senjus are combating with the enemy as we speak. But their numbers are great and Kyosuke and Ichigo are buying enough time for my clan to escape. But even then, the enemy has us surrounded." Arashi clarified. "So you want me to fight in the battle, while at the same time protect your clan while they escape?" Kyubi replied. With silent tears streaming down his cheeks, Arashi yelled, "Please, Kyubi. Sama. I know I have no right to ask this of you. But you're the only one I can ask." Kyubi spent a few moments staring down at Arashi. Does he have to do it? He owed this human nothing at all. From the day they first met, this same human had been bothering him non-stop, calling him and his brothers gods. When in reality they weren't. To him, it made no sense. Even though they were separate parts of it, with tails, these humans still saw them as such. They were gods. Kyubi sighed sternly and closed his eyes. Alright, ever since they first met, this man has prayed to and for him every day. It was time for Kyubi to pay the favor forward. Very well. I will join in the battle, and protect your clansmen as well as I possibly can. With gratitude, Arashi said, "Thank you, Kyubi. Sama." That being said, Kyubi vanished out of sight in an instant, and the enormous fox started destroying the opposing forces outside with a monstrous roar. It was also on that day that the creatures with tails came to be thought of as demonic. With blood slowly trickling down the seat, Arashi staggered into the room's lone chair and took a seat. With great care, Arashi took off his armor, set it next to his chair, and settled Altair into his lap. His smile was bright but sad. "This will be our last moments together, Altair," he whispered. Altair merely shook. A young man ran into the room and knelt by his father's side, exclaiming, "Father." The man's hair was shoulder length and spiky, with multiple bangs overshadowing his eyes and 2 bangs framing his face. Clad in the traditional Uzumaki armor, he had a cape draped over his back. Unshed tears filled his light purple eyes as he worriedly glanced at his father. "Ah, Byakuya. I'm glad you're here. Take my armor and lock into the door behind me, would you?" Arashi asked weakly. Byakuya followed instructions after nodding. He unlocked a hidden room and entered while holding Arashi's armor. He exited the room after placing the armor neatly on a pedestal. He shut the door and secured it after leaving. "Now give me the key." Byakuya silently gave the key to his father, and Arashi raised his hand and took out his left eye, exposing it to be merely a prosthetic eye inserted in place of his actual one. Arashi gave his son a melancholic smile and replaced the glass eye in its socket after inserting the key into the empty one. "Take Altair and go, my son. You are not meant to die here with me. Go with your fellow Uzumaki. It was fate that you would lead the Uzumaki as of today." Arashi replied. Father. You can't mean. You are currently the second head of the Uzumaki clan. Lead our clan to greatness." "Byakuya," Arashi interrupted. With a soft, "That's right," he went on to say, before his breathing stopped, his body slumped against the seat, and the light went out of his eyes. Byakuya cried out in anguish and pain, "Father." Grasping his father's body, he wept aloud while clutching his robes. Naruto averted his gaze from the scene. The blonde bowed his head respectfully and with sadness as he closed his eyes. The library was old and dusty again when the blonde opened his eyes. He lowered his gaze slightly and fixed it on Arashi's skeleton. He closed his eyes and said a brief prayer. The blonde opened his eyes, approached the skeleton, and put his hand on its shoulder. He whispered, "Please pardon me for what I am about to do." Having said that, the blonde Uzumaki reached inside Arashi's skull with his hand and extracted a key. The Jinchuriki moved in the direction of the hidden door, running his hand along the walls in search of the place to insert the key. When he found the key, he inserted it and spun it counterclockwise. And the hidden door started to open slowly. Naruto was astounded by what he discovered within the chamber. The discovery included an enormous quantity of gold, gems, rubies, and some of the rarest metal to have ever graced the elemental nations. This was enough to buy almost every business on the planet multiple times over. Arashi's armor was resting on a pedestal in the center of the space. Once more, this is the Assassin's Creed Brotherhood's Helmschmied Drachen armor. The name of the armor was also carved in the pedestal. Helmschmied Drachen. Naruto said, gazing in amazement at the armor. When the blonde touched the armor, white flashed across his vision. When Naruto opened his eyes, he was taken aback by what he saw. All he saw was an immense expanse of white that appeared to stretch for miles at a time. Irritated, Naruto sighed and wondered where he had disappeared to. He couldn't possibly be back in the temple, is he not? A happy voice exclaimed, "Well now, it's nice to finally meet you face to face." Naruto. Chan. Naruto's eyes widened, and he pivoted to look directly at Uzumaki Arashi, the Uzumaki clan's first head. When Altair saw his old master, he pulsed out slightly happy. "You seem to be gazing at a ghost, Naruto." "Chan," Arashi said, his features sporting a playful smirk. At the end of his questions, Naruto was glaring at Arashi with cold eyes. How?" he stammered. "How are you alive? I found your skeleton just a few minutes ago. How do you know my name, and where are we?" the blonde asked. "Those icy eyes remind me of him," said Arashi, raising an eyebrow. "You really are his great grandson," the man with red hair pondered. "In order." Arashi said, "I knew someone would be coming to take my armor for themselves. I made sure to seal my chakra, and a bit of my soul into the armor." So in a sense, I am dead. How I know your name? Well, you tend to learn a lot of things when you are blessed with the ability to see the distant future. As to where we are, Arashi laughed, you tell me. After carefully examining the surroundings, Naruto arrived at a single conclusion. We are inside the world between the living and the dead, aren't we? Asked the brunette. With a beaming nod, Arashi's bangs fluttered up and down. Anywho, I'm sure you're wondering why you're here exactly. The blonde nodded. Well, it's simple. We are here to see if you are worthy of wielding my armor. He concluded, his tone dead serious. Ding, 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 ding. We have a winner. He complimented. Naruto slightly straightened. You will go through tests to see if you are truly worthy of wearing my armor. Should you be to be worthy, you may take it. However, should you not be worthy, well, you're not getting it. He concluded, after an excessively dramatic pause. Naruto broke out in a sweat. Was this man truly his forebear? Arashi exclaimed, now then. Onto to the test. Databano. With excitement. After that, Naruto's doubts disappeared. Tensing up, Naruto questioned, so I guess I have to fight you? Right? Arashi cried out in a scandalized tone, oh heavens no. With a broad smile, he exclaimed, you're not fighting me. You're fighting someone you respect, and he is your great-grandfather. Naruto's expression turned inquisitive, who is it? When Naruto asked, Arashi grabbed a strand of the blonde's hair, gave him a yelp, made a few hand gestures, and slammed his hands on the ground. Uzumaki sealing technique, ancestral summoning. He screamed. Next to him, a gray colored smoke began to puff, and as it gradually cleared, Naruto saw a face he had only seen in certain photos and on the Hokage mountain. White hair, spiky and shaggy. A Hapori protector with the Konoha symbol engraved on it that covered his forehead and the side of his face. Red eyes looked around sternly. His form was adorned with mostly plate-based blue armor. Unlike Uchiha Madara, the armor covered his entire back in addition to his shoulders, chest, waist, and left side of his legs. His armor was adorned with a white fur color that extended around the back of his neck and ended at his shoulders. Where am I? The man with white hair asked sternly, surveying the entirely white room. His crimson eyes lit up the white room a few more times before his cold, unblinking stare fell on a man whose long, spiky red hair reached his ankles, resembling Uchiha Madara's. And a blonde with sapphire blue eyes and hair that seemed to be golden yellow. And his cheeks are marked with whisker. He asked, and who are you two? Naruto exclaimed in shock, no way. It can't be. Why? You want me to fight him? Pointing to the white-haired man next to him, the red-haired man exclaimed, that's right, Naruto. Chan. In order to prove yourself worthy of my armor, you will be tested by none other than him. What insolence! I asked a question and I expect to be answered. Now tell me. Why am I not trapped in the stomach of the Shinigami at the moment? And just who is this young upstart beside you? The white-haired man asked, giving them both a severe glare. Red eyes glared heatedly at the red-haired man in front of him. The redhead said, my. You are full of questions, aren't you, Tobirama? Chan? Tobirama blushed due to the suffix on his name. He concluded with a smile, as for your question, this is Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto of the Uzumaki clan. Databano. Tobirama said indifferently, then turned to face Arashi, who was grinning. I see, so you're from Mito's clan him? Nice to meet you. I am Senju Tobirama, Nidaime Hokage. Though judging from your expression you already know that. With his iciest glare directed at Arashi, Tobirama questioned coldly, and as for you? You didn't answer my other question. Why am I not in the stomach of the Shinigami? And who are you? There also seemed to be a slight drop in temperature. Naruto gave a small shudder. According to some of the stories Jiraiya told him, his father could use just a glare to make even the most experienced shinobi shudder in fear of him. Heck, Jiraiya acknowledged that he had shivered once or twice as well. However, the sentiment emanating from Tobirama at the time was, Beyond description. His hand trembled slightly, but only slightly. It felt like all of his blood was frozen in pure ice. Arrow. Sensei informed me that the Nidame Hokage and I could be comparable in our abilities to manipulate water. However, why'd I feel that he would still defeat me even if that were the case? The fair-haired Jinchuriki pondered. I am Uzumaki Arashi. Tobirama twitched at the moniker. Era? Well, I guess I can tell you Tobi-chan. Tobirama's only indication of shock at the moment was an eyebrow lift. And the reason why you are outside the stomach of the Shinigami at the moment is because I used the ancestral summoning sealing technique. Tobirama glared into Arashi's happy eyes and said, the ancestral summoning sealing technique. Impossible. That sealing technique was said to be lost shortly after the formation of the shinobi villages. Nay, Nidame. Sama, what sealing technique are you talking about? Naruto inquired. Tobirama took a quick look at the blonde, and for some reason, he felt like grinning at him, but he maintained his serious expression. Listen up, and listen good, Naruto. The ancestral summoning sealing technique was a Fuin jutsu created by the Uzumaki clan, so that they may summon their ancestors from the past, and have a sort of spirit journey, so to speak. Many Uzumakis did this to seek enlightenment. And they did this by learning from their ancestors by using this technique. However, the technique was said to be lost shortly after the formation of the shinobi villages. The former Hokage with white hair clarified. With comprehension, Naruto nodded and fixed his gaze on Arashi. With Tobirama still glaring at the redhead, the blonde questioned, so how do you know the technique in the first place? Arashi-san? With a laugh, Arashi exclaimed, duh. I created the technique in the first place. With pride. Tobirama gasped. That explains it. You know the sealing technique because you created it, huh? With an innocent expression on his face, Arashi exclaimed, that's right. Never underestimate the power of seals. Tobirama stared at the man in a deadpan manner before focusing on Naruto. Judging by the fact that he is from a few hundred years from the past, I can tell I'm not of his ancestor. So I can only assume I am related to you in some way. The former Hokage said. He said he was summoning my great-grandfather, Naruto said, nodding slowly. Tobirama's eyes widened, then went back to being expressionless. The man with white hair said, I see, I understand now. With an eyebrow raised, Naruto inquired, what do you mean? Not many people knew this. Tobirama continued, but I had wife I married in secret. The only ones who knew of her were my brother, Hiruzen, and Mito. No one, besides them, ever knew I was married. Why not keep it a secret? Inquired the Jinchuriki. Unlike Hashirama, I was very paranoid. But that wasn't a bad thing, given our line of work. Regardless, before I died, I learned that she was pregnant with my child. I had planned to return to her after the war was over and retire as a shinobi. But that backfired when I gave up my life to save my comrades so that the next generation may live. Tobirama sighed and closed his eyes. After a brief period of silence, Naruto said, you know. To get Tobirama's attention. I grew up without knowing who my parents were. Everyone always told me that my parents abandoned me, but I never believed that. It wasn't until I learned who my parents were, did I finally understand why I never met them. My father, and your grandson, was the Yondaime Hokage. Tobirama's eyes grew wide at that, but he was filled with fear for what the blonde might say next. My mother and father perished during the Kyuubi's attack on Konoha, Tobirama said, his expression expressionless. My mother was the second Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, and the two of them gave their lives to save the village. And to save me as well. They gave their lives to save me, and now I carry their hopes and dreams on my shoulders. They died sealing the Kyuubi inside of me. Tobirama was taken aback by the blonde's unwavering resolve and experienced mixed emotions, including pride and melancholy. His grandson's valiant defense of the village filled him with pride. And sorrow that he had to pass away so quickly. Tobirama tensed a little as Naruto said, I always wondered why they did it. Why the village was so important. But. However, Ero Sensei began to make me read the history of the clan wars, and the stories of you, your brother, and Madara. I realized that the village was needed. The brunette replied. The village was created so that the future generation of shinobi would be able to live in a safe place. A place where the children did not die at such a young age. Gazing at his great-grandson, Tobirama started to feel proud. I will fight to protect the village from any and all threats because I fight to protect my friends, comrades, the next generation, and the dreams my parents left me, Naruto declared, wearing a determined smile. That's why. I can't help but feel a sense of pride that I am your great-grandson, and that my father gave it his all to save the village. Though it hurts. The village is needed. If the village is gone, then the future generation would feed off this hatred, and other villages will plunge into war, to try and fill the power gap that will be left. Naruto clarified. Tobirama smiled slightly for the first time in a very long time. Tobirama put a hand on the blonde's shoulder and grinned proudly at the boy. I'm proud. That you have such a solid understanding of why this village needed. Tobirama said. Actually, Tobirama didn't anticipate that he would get along with the boy this quickly. Rubbing the back of his neck, Naruto said shyly, thanks. Tobirama. Gigi. Tobirama's expression returned to that of indifference with a grunt. He didn't mind, though, in the slightest if the blonde called him Gigi. To tell the truth, he found it rather enjoyable. Furthermore, he was older in theory. Arashi bellowed, hey. Don't forget about me. In a silly way. I apologize, I didn't realize you were there. Tobirama and Naruto both laughed hysterically. Curling into a ball, Arashi drew circles on the ground. He cried, so cruel. Tobirama jerked, saying, just like Hashirama, he muttered to himself. Blinking, Naruto looked at Arashi's depressed form. He started to approach the man, but Tobirama stopped him by extending his arm. The former Hokage said blandly, don't. Just don't. If he is anything like Hashirama, then he'll be just fine. Naruto parted his lips to object, but he quickly closed them when Arashi stood up and grinned broadly. Anyway. He laughed. Let's back to the reason why you are here, Tobi. Chan. You're here to test your great-grandson, and find out if he is worthy of my armor. The white-haired man asked, is that so? Very well, I'm interested to know just how strong my great-grandson is anyway. Tobirama looked at the blonde Uzumaki. After saying, great. I'll be over there. Arashi vanished in a flash and then reappeared a few feet away from them. By the way, I forgot to mention Naruto. Chan. You can use chakra now. He yelled. So shall we commence? Tobirama. Gigi? The blonde inquired, adopting a taijutsu stance, and Naruto almost sighed in relief at that. The former Hokage said sharply, scowling at his great-grandson, yes, let's get started. As the Nidaime Hokage, I will show you my resolve, and will. The Nidaime Hokage vanished in an instant after saying those words, and Naruto was just in time to avoid a blow to the head that was headed straight for him. In response, the blonde turned on his heel and made an attempt to hit his great-grandfather in the back. But Tobirama's natural instincts overcame him, and the Nidaime Hokage managed to turn on his heel and grab the blonde's leg with his arm. The Nidaime Hokage grabbed the blonde firmly by the leg and punched her in the face. But Naruto would have none of it. The blonde let himself fall to the ground, put his hands there, and started to turn around. Tobirama's eyes grew wide as his great-grandson's method of releasing him made him be dragged along. The Nidaime Hokage had to release his hold on his great-grandson in order to avoid losing his balance, and the former Hokage was propelled skyward. After stopping his spinning, Naruto launched himself into the air and made an attempt to strike his great-grandfather in the chest with a kick. Tobirama, however, showed himself to be nimble and was able to move just out of the blonde's reach. He then flipped multiple times before landing soundly on the ground. He lunged in the direction of the still falling Naruto, and he launched a powerful taijutsu attack on the blonde. Tobirama leapt to his feet and kicked the blonde in the face. Naruto used his forearm to block just in time, but he winced a little bit when he felt Tobirama's armor, if not break his bones. Once again, Tobirama surprised the Jinchuriki by abruptly placing his other foot directly on his forearm. The blonde was then thrown onto the Nidame Hokage, who spun around and kicked right into Naruto's face. While the blonde was getting better, the Nidame Hokage leapt away, impressed with her thus far. Gritting his teeth, Naruto held his face. That kick was painful. It did, in fact. The blonde took his hands off his face and gave Tobirama a menacing scowl. After charging, Naruto used another taijutsu technique on Tobirama. Tobirama dove under and kicked his feet in an attempt to trip the blonde. But Naruto saw that coming and leapt over the kick to deliver a powerful blow to the Nidame's face. Tobirama jumped back a few feet and rubbed his jaw, grunting as he felt Naruto kick his face. Tobirama gave a compliment and a reprimand at the same time. Not bad. If you had kicked any harder, you might have dislocated it. Let's see how you deal with this. A massive water body dragon materialized from the atmosphere behind the Nidame Hokage, making the hand sign, water style, water dragon. Before lunging towards the blonde, Naruto made multiple hand gestures as his eyes grew wide. Water style, water wall. The blonde was surrounded by a wall of water that kept him safe. Though it was barely audible, Tobirama's pride was evident as he raised his brow slightly and said, "Interesting, so you mastered water manipulation to such an extent that you may very well rival me with it." Remarkable. The Nidame shouted his technique and formed another single hand sign. 3 large sharks surfaced and lunged at the blonde at breakneck speeds, calling out, "Water style, water shark shotgun." With a swallow, Naruto created another water wall as a precaution. While the second shark breached the first water wall and damaged the second, the first shark caused some damage. The blonde had to leap into the air to escape being struck by the shark when it totally broke through the third water wall. Searching the field for his great grandfather, Naruto was unable to locate him. "Where is he?" murmured the blonde. A voice yelled, "Over here." When the young wise man turned, he saw his great grandfather actually riding atop a fucking tsunami, and his eyes widened. That was really fierce. The blonde, like his great grandfather, jumped on the tsunami and tried to surf it, leaving little time to take in the sight. After learning the technique, Naruto surfed all the way to his great-grandfather and performed a taijutsu on him. Tobirama whirled, attempting to kick the blonde, but Naruto followed his gut feeling and leapt over the blow. He made multiple hand gestures and used the water to push himself over Tobirama's head. The blonde exclaimed, "Water style, water phoenix." As a phoenix composed completely of water swirled around him. It has been a while. Ever since I witnessed that maneuver, Nidame pondered. The brother of Hashirama made a series of hand signals while shaking his head. Water style, water wall. Water surrounded him defensively, forming a wall that was at least twice as big as Naruto's. The phoenix struck the wall and quickly vanished as a result of its collision with the wall made of water. Tobirama's eyes scanned the room, searching for his great grandson, and he was surprised by the response he got. As soon as the blonde appeared beneath him, he abruptly leapt from his tsunami spot and struck the Nidame in the chin with his extended arm. The blonde spiraled in the water beneath him as the Nidame spinned and he kicked her in the chest. Tobirama said, "Water style, water shark bomb." While putting his hands in the water. The blonde was staring at the water shark with wide eyes when a water shark appeared in the water and started to swim toward her. After creating a single shadow clone, Naruto threw the original out of the water by grabbing him by the arm. The clone puffed away after being eaten by the shark. Coughing up water, Naruto gave his great grandfather a scowl. The blonde said, "Honorable shadow clone, your sacrifice will not be in vain." Tobirama arched an eyebrow and wondered absently if his great grandson's mental health was something to be concerned about. He immediately dismissed that idea after witnessing the blonde make multiple hand signals. Lightning style. Laser circus. The blonde exclaimed as multiple lightning bolts shot from her hands and raced in the direction of the Nidame and his tsunami. With wide eyes, Tobirama reached behind his back and produced a sword hilt. "Raijin!" he exclaimed, and the notorious blade came to life at once, easily fending off the blonde's lightning. "Fast blows." Tobirama said, "That was close." The blonde only produced a tiny flash of lightning. Otherwise, it did nothing. "It feels good to be able to wield you once more, Raijin." The blonde's shocked expression caught the Nidaime Hokage's attention as he fixed his attention on Naruto, raising an eyebrow. With genuine curiosity, Tobirama inquired, "Why do you seem so surprised?" Naruto replied, "Because I destroyed that thing." "Destroyed? What makes you think that?" Tobirama scowled. "A missing nin from Konoha stole the Raijin and used it for his own selfish wants. I destroyed the blade to show just how foolish it was to rely on a weapon." Naruto replied with integrity. Tobirama arched an eyebrow slightly and asked, idly twisting the lightning blade, "Did Hiruzen, by any chance, constantly send out search parties for the Raijin?" The Nidaime was nonchalant. "No." "Why?" Naruto asked, his eyes showing his bewilderment. Then he recalled that occasionally, whenever he went to see the Sandaime, there would be people pressuring him to dispatch search parties in an attempt to locate the Nidaime's coveted sword. However, the elderly man never seemed to care. Tobirama said, "Then Hiruzen actually went through with it." "Went through with what?" Tobirama breathed deeply. Hiruzen was always a bit too obsessed with taking everything of historical value in Konoha, and locking them inside the Hokage vault. He would take them, create identical copies of them, and display them where they would always be found. The copies would be there, but the real ones would remain safely locked away within the Hokage vault. My brother thought that Hiruzen was just being paranoid. But I approved of Hiruzen's actions. Tobirama clarified. One day, he told me that when I retire, or should I die, he would create a copy of the Raijin, and stow the real one away within the Hokage tower. As a matter of fact, I helped him create a copy of my Raijin. It was a perfect and identical copy, with only one difference. The Raijin copy was 10 times weaker than the original. The former Hokage said, causing Naruto's eyes. "Well, what you're saying is," Naruto faltered. "That's right, the Raijin you destroyed was nothing but a fake. The real one is currently inside the Hokage vault. The Raijin in my hand right now is just one I created from a spiritual sense." Naruto said, "Look underneath, the underneath." Tobirama arched an eyebrow and smiled slightly. Senju, who had white hair, mused, "Look underneath, the underneath, huh? I haven't heard that one before." A harsh, stern expression crossed his features as he glared. "Enough now with words. It is now time for action." With a hard scowl on his lips, Tobirama said, "I have been going easy on you, Naruto. But now, it's time to see how you fare against my will of fire." Before Naruto could even open his eyes, Tobirama was inches away from him, the tip of his Raijin slowly inching closer to the blonde's face. The blonde yielded to instinct, and he dodged the Raijin's blade by ducking down in time. However, a few of his hair strands were cut off. With the intention of gaining some distance, Naruto ran off. The blonde silently made a clone, and the clone leapt a good distance away without saying anything. Altair was drawn to the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki, and the silver blade was practically trembling with anticipation. Tobirama furrowed his brow. "Amazing. I never would have imagined that I would see the fabled Altair at all. It really is an amazing blade." When Naruto charged at his great grandfather, the blonde met the white-haired Senju halfway, their metals grinding angrily against one another, their respective blades slamming together violently. After Naruto shoved Tobirama aside, the blonde sidestepped his blade and lunged in for a vertical cut. But Tobirama bounced back quickly, and he swung horizontally, bringing the two blades together once more. Tobirama pushed the blonde back this time, and he kicked Naruto several meters away. The former Hokage made a single hand sign and flung his Raijin into the air. "Water style. Water dragon." Tobirama exclaimed as a dragon materialized all around him, sending him flying. After capturing his renowned Raijin, Tobirama leapt onto the head of his water dragon and started to ride the water. Based beast. Just as the water-formed dragon was about to overtake Naruto, the blonde gave a startled look and jumped. After the blonde Jinchuriki landed behind his great grandfather, he spun around and tried to push Altair back into Tobirama. Tobirama swung around and leaned away from Altair's trajectory out of sheer skill and instinct. The blade went through his armor and past him. Tobirama abruptly grabbed hold of Naruto's hand, launching his Raijin at the blonde's exposed neck. Uzumaki, who had blonde hair, widened his eyes and raised his other hand to block the Raigen's blow. Tobirama's hand and face were covered in blood as Naruto used his other hand to catch the Raijin. The blonde gripped the Raijin tightly, and he felt volts of electricity course through his arm, making him grit his teeth in agony. With an expression of impassive sternness and a blank stare at his great grandson, Tobirama declared, "I have first blood. You did remarkable. I never expected someone to ever catch my Raijin like that. You've surprised me, Naruto. But it's over now. Even if you are a Jinchuriki, it doesn't change the fact that your arm is now paralyzed by my Raijin." With his hair covering his face, Naruto said, "You speak as if it's over. From your view it may not be over. But from my point of view it is. So enlighten me as to why you think it is not over," Tobirama said with narrowed eyes. A distinctive popping sound was heard, and Naruto trailed off, because Tobirama looked around the battlefield, wondering absently where his great grandson's shadow clone had disappeared to. Quite frankly, he had forgotten all about the shadow clone. He saw a plume of smoke that was slowly dissipating. And as he made the connection, his eyes narrowed. Tobirama came to the conclusion that Naruto needed that shadow clone for something. However, what? As he said, Tobirama turned back to face Naruto. "This fight isn't over yet. Because," the blonde said as he slowly raised his head to reveal closed eyes with an orange tint surrounding them. "I haven't entered the honored sage mode yet." At that moment, Naruto's eyes snapped open, revealing themselves to be a bright yellow color with a horizontal bar serving as a pupil. The blonde's hold on Tobirama's sword tightened, and the blonde threw the second Hokage skyward. Tobirama's eyes widened. The blonde Hokage tightly grasped Tobirama's hands as Naruto materialized in front of him, preventing the white-haired Hokage from making the hand gesture. With the added strength of Sage Mode coursing through his body, the blonde slapped the second Hokage square in the face and declared, "I won't let you escape." It was going to hurt, the strike would hurt. The white-haired Hokage was flung across the battlefield once more as Tobirama flinched in agony. For a few moments, the man in blue armor skidded across the ground, but he eventually forced himself to stop by driving his feet into the ground. The previous Hokage got to his feet with a sense of pride and triumph after he skidded for a few more seconds before coming to a stop. His face was expressionless, but as he wiped the blood from his lip, you could see the pride bursting in his eyes. "If I hadn't used chakra to last minutely reinforce my face, then I would have suffered a severe concussion and my entire jaw would have been dislocated. No, we are speaking of the honored sage mode here. If I hadn't used chakra to reinforce it, my head would have been paste." The Nidaime Hokage grinned to himself, the boy is that powerful. "Hashirama. I have the most amazing great grandson ever," he declared, intending to make fun of Hashirama. Hashirama never ceased to bemoan the fact that his 12-year-old son was a Jonin. He now has a great grandson who, in a fair fight, was able to hit him and cause him to bleed. Something the son of Hashirama could never accomplish. Thus, Hashirama, take that. It's possible that I was still holding back a lot. Nevertheless, I'm happy for now. Strong is my great-grandson. More powerful than I had anticipated. This is sufficient." The Nidaime Hokage severed the chakra stream to his Raijin, causing the blade to retract right away. Tobirama folded his arms and tucked it into his armor. With perplexity in his voice, Naruto said, "Hey. Aren't we still fighting?" While peering into Tobirama's red eyes through toad-like eyes and scratching his cheek. Tobirama smiled slightly, a smile he reserved for Hashirama and his covert spouse. He turned his head to the left and shrugged, saying, "There is no need. I am content with what I was able to gain from this fight. And I trust that Arashi-san is satisfied with your test results." With a blink, Naruto opened his mouth to say that nobody was present, but then Arashi materialized where Tobirama had been staring. "He has incredible sensory abilities," the blonde said. "I still have a lot of catching up to do," with a broad smile and determined eyes. His once toad-like eyes vanished, returning to their characteristic sapphire blue color. Though curiosity peaked in his eyes, Tobirama asked aloofly, "So how did Naruto do, Arashi-san?" He did amazingly. The point of the test was to see if Naruto had the strength to bear the armor. Arashi replied. Naruto questioned, wait, what do you mean by strength? You see Naruto. Chan. Arashi said. I had that armor specifically made to only allow people who have a strong will to wear the armor. If your will isn't strong enough, then the armor will not allow you to even pick it up. The wise Uzumaki clarified. I see. Tobirama thought. If Naruto proved that he wasn't strong enough or if he didn't have a good enough will, then the armor would reject him. Am I right? Arashi cried out, correct. Tobirama. Chan. Tobirama jerked. Hesitantly, Naruto said, so I guess I can have the armor now. Right? Immediately, Arashi's expression turned serious. Unfortunately, no. There is still one last test you must face. Though. As you are now. You're not ready for it. Arashi sighed. With a hint of rage in his voice, Tobirama demanded, not ready? What do you mean by that? Explain. He had worked hard for what his great grandson was being denied, and he would not stand by and do nothing. Arashi started, I can't give Naruto Chan his second and final test yet. Because this test will be about his resolve. Tobirama opened his mouth to dispute, but Arashi quickly continued as the first member of the Uzumaki clan. I can't and won't give Naruto his test yet. Because he still needs to face his own darkness. Because in this test he would have to deal with another's darkness. He said. Reluctantly, the white-haired Senju nodded as Tobirama stopped. Using his senses, he was able to identify. There was a tiny but ominous, malevolent vibe to his chakra. It brought to Tobirama's mind, him. With determination shining in his eyes, Naruto abruptly exclaimed, then I have no choice. I'll face my own darkness and come back here. I'm not sure how or when I'll face my own darkness. But I'll do it. Tobirama's lips quirked as he silently observed his great grandson. His disposition is cheerful and amiable when not engaged in combat. He is, however, cold-blooded, calculating, and merciless in combat. It resembles a blend of Hashirama, myself, and Madara, he thought to himself. Okay then Naruto Chan. I'll eagerly await your arrival here once again. Arashi said. Grinning, Naruto looked up at his great grandfather. Before I go, I have to ask. Who was your wife Tobirama? Gigi. And what was she like? He was curious. With his eyes closed, Tobirama smiled warmly, lighting up the Nidaim's face. My wife's name was Namikaze Sayako. Naruto looked up in disbelief. She was a civilian. But unlike other civilians, she knew what she wanted and stopped at nothing to get it. She had blonde hair much like yours, it was long and straight. Eyes that were a deep forest green. She was kind, but ferocious when upset. She was the love of my life. And I dread to think of her reaction when he heard of my death. Tobirama said in a solemn voice. Naruto tentatively touched Tobirama's shoulder and the white-haired Senju met Naruto's gaze. He smiled deeply, the blonde said, I'm sure, she mourned for your death Tobirama. GG. But I'm sure that she kept moving forward, because she knew that you wouldn't want her to give up on life. Tobirama fluffed up Naruto's hair and allowed himself a tiny smile. You're a strange one, aren't you? Naruto blushed with shame as he timidly scratched his head. Naruto laughed, I get that a lot, Tobirama. GG. Well, before I send you off Naruto Chan. You got any question for me? Arashi responded. Oh yeah. Naruto grinned. The ribbon that I have tied in my hair. What's it for exactly? I noticed it tied around one of Kyuubi's claws during one of the past memories that I've seen around this temple. Oh. That was a gift that I gave Kyuubi Sama. I always noticed that Kyuubi Sama was a bit angry most of the time. So I created that ribbon, with my chakra, some help from Ichigo and his wood style. And boom. You have a ribbon that helps Kyuubi Sama remain calm to a certain degree. The wise Uzumaki clarified. With a slight smile, Naruto muttered, I see. My second question. How was it that this temple was never discovered up until now? With a mischievous giggle, Arashi said, you'll find out. His eyes glinted, suggesting that he would be amused by Naruto's response. Guess I will, huh? Well, this is goodbye. Arashi. Gigi. Tobirama, Gigi. Tobirama nodded slightly to Naruto, and Arashi gave him a thumbs up. Before his form vanished, the blonde gave the two a smile. There was a brief period of silence before Tobirama turned to face Arashi. Now what else do you want from me? I'm pretty sure you summoned me for a different reason. Tobirama asked. With a sigh, Arashi replied, I need your help. With what? I already have someone in mind to test Naruto against in his second test. It's one of the main reasons why I want Naruto to master his darkness. Because this person will literally manipulate Naruto through that darkness. And this person has stated that he has no interest in young Naruto. Arashi said in a gloomy voice. Who? Is it? Arashi thought, perhaps it's better to show you, and then he repeated the hand gestures he used to call Tobirama to him. Arashi rose slowly to his feet as a thick cloud of smoke enveloped the area, proclaiming, Uzumaki sealing technique, ancestral summoning. With a grave tone, Arashi said, the person whom I'm speaking is someone you've met, Tobirama. San. And he is also Naruto. Chan's great-grandfather. Tobirama narrowed his eyes, the glare all the more menacing because of his red eyes. A deep, emotionless voice said, I thought told you Uzumaki. I have no interest in my great-grandson. So stop summoning me. Unless of course you want to settle this matter with a dance of death. Tobirama heard that voice and a chilly shiver went down his spine. That's not possible. Someone other than him, please. He did not want that curse to affect his great-grandson. He objected to him testing Naruto. But his fears were realized when the smoke eventually cleared. Uchiha. Madara. When Naruto opened his eyes, he blinked quickly. The blonde noticed that he was on the floor as his vision became slightly blurry. Jinchuriki, the blonde, blinked quickly and then rose slowly to his feet. As he extended his limbs, Naruto moaned and his joints cracked. Naruto took a quick look around the room and noticed that everything was exactly as it had been before he met with Tobirama and Arashi. The blonde saw Arashi's armor and sighed. He can't wear it, even though he really wishes he could. Since he hasn't yet earned the privilege. The blonde turned to face the many riches in the room as well, and he made the decision that he would not, at the very least, walk out empty-handed. Besides, Gaara could also use a bit of this gold. Keeping that in mind, the blonde started grabbing 3 or more handfuls of gold and gems. Once the blonde completed her task, she cast a quick glance at Arashi's armor and he disappeared into the room. The door to the hidden chamber shut behind him, and the blonde took out the key. Naruto retraced his steps out of the temple after sealing the key inside a seal he carried on his arm. Naruto had to spend several minutes going backwards, and he almost lost his way a few times, but eventually the blonde managed to escape the temple. The voice of the Kyuubi occupied his thoughts once the blonde had left the temple. Well, I will admit. I wasn't expecting that. Kyuubi? Did you know what was going on? Asked Naruto out loud, blinking. I knew what's been going on ever since you entered that chamber with Arashi's armor. But I didn't say anything as I knew Arashi would reveal himself. Though I never expected you to meet with the Nidaime. Kyuubi responded. Mutedly, Naruto ascended a small mound of sand, saying, I see. With a slightly sly tone, Kyuubi said, Hey kid. You want to see something that will shock you so much, that you might have a heart attack? Jinchuriki, the blonde, arched an eyebrow. Okay, what exactly? Look back at the temple, and not only will you be shocked at what you will see, but you will also have Arashi's answer to when you asked why this temple was never found until now. The blonde shrugged, turned, and fixed her intense gaze on the temple. The youthful Jonin observed right away how different seals started to illuminate the walls and framework of the temple. When he sensed an earthquake, his eyes grew wide. Naruto was surprised by this turn of events. In the desert, how is an earthquake possible? The blonde then realized that the temple was rising out of the earth. Sand began to fall from it as it slowly and steadily rose from the earth. It was visible as it rose above the earth, accompanied by smaller buildings. The blonde was unable to describe the other buildings, which seemed to be barracks as well. When Naruto came to the conclusion that the temple was nothing at all, his eyes grew wide. It was a stronghold. And as it kept rising from the earth, Naruto saw that it was a huge castle perched atop an island that was both floating and flying. As the island rose higher and farther away, Naruto noticed that it was moving, slowly but steadily, as though he was dreaming. Knowing that people would notice a flying island caused Naruto's eyes to enlarge. Of all things. But as he watched the floating island start to literally disappear into the sky, his worries were allayed. Stated differently, it was becoming undetectable. The blonde whispered, "A genjutsu. I haven't seen that in a long time. It's good to see the Uzu Haven again." Uzu Haven? The name of the island. That island is where Arashi first began his own creation of the Uzumaki clan. At first, the land which they lived in was filled with nothing but wild and dangerous animals that would make even most jonin cower in fear. That is until Arashi came up with a new method of sealing. In order to get that island even float up in the air like that, it required over millions of anti-gravity seals and a chakra source so powerful that it would have to rival all of the Biju put together. Kyuubi continued. But then, where did they get the power for this? That's where me and my siblings come in. Because the Uzumaki clan constantly prayed for, even though we weren't really deities, we decided to repay the Uzumaki for their loyalty. We put all of our chakra and created an orb. A orb with the power of all of the Biju. They called it the Biju Legacy. It suited the name of the orb quite well. With a hint of pride in his voice, the massive fox explained, the Uzumaki locked that orb directly into the heart of the island, and should it be removed, the entire island would fall back into the ground. Shouting in amazement, Naruto said, "Incredible." "Yes, I am aware of Kit." Kyuubi bragged, "Now get moving, it's time to head back. We Biju are amazing. Hold on. When I'm prepared to take Arashi's second test, I'm meant to go back to that island. How on earth am I going to locate it? Your chakra is already memorized by the island. When an Uzumaki enters the island, Arashi sealed it with a small seal. This means that if you want to find it, simply send out a chakra pulse, and the island will return it." Kyuubi drew lead in boredom. In order to test that theory, Naruto sent out a chakra pulse, and the island immediately felt the pulse return. Arashi. Gigi thought of everything, didn't he? Snorted Naruto. The blonde shook his head, muttering, "It's going to be a long walk back towards Suna," and he sighed. With a sigh, the blonde set off across the desert, knowing that by the end of this mission, he was going to detest the place. The rain never stopped falling in a megacure. It never stopped, never ended. It never stopped raining. An orange-haired man with numerous facial piercings perched atop Aim's tallest tower. He had red clouds embroidered on a black cloak. With emotionless eyes, the man gazed down at his village as he opened his Rinnegan eyes. A woman with short, light blue hair stood behind him and uttered the word, "Pain." Her hair was adorned with an origami flower, and her bangs framed her face. Her orange eyes conveyed nothing but apathy. Pain simply gave Conan a quick glance before telling her to go on. She answered simply, "He is here." Suddenly, Tobi materialized his form from his teleportation technique and appeared behind her. Tobi asked inanely, "Must you always look so melodramatic and depressing?" Pain? Pain just shot Tobi a blank stare before returning his focus to his village. "Why are you here? Madara?" Tobi just laughed at Pain. "I am here to discuss the death of both Deidara and Sasori. The death of two of our members has struck quite a blow, don't you think? I never thought we would lose two Akatsuki members so quickly. And it was only over the Ichibi as well. This is quite bothersome. Wouldn't you say so?" He asked in a tone that was almost mocking. "It does not matter if we lose even more members. The plan to create the Biju super weapon will commence as planned. This world will know pain, just as I planned for it to witness. The loss of both Deidara and Sasori is only a minor setback. Pain bluntly stated. Tobi continued to chuckle. On the contrary, Deidara was quite useful as he was a long-range type shinobi, and I'm pretty sure that no one else in the Akatsuki can fight at long range as well as Deidara did. Sasori was in charge of our biggest network of spies, and with his death, we just lost all of our contacts if I am not mistaken. Tobi said with a serious and mocking tone. Was I not correct in assuming that Zetsu was an even better spy than Sasori? Pain asked coolly, practically feeling Toba's smile. True, Zetsu was, and still is, the best spy in the elemental nations, but it doesn't hurt to have backups when Zetsu isn't available. Tobi shrugged as his smile grew a little wider. Pain asked, emotionlessly, why are you really here? Madara? At last looking up from his village at the masked Uchiha. Tobi answered, listing a variety of reasons for his possible presence. I could be here to get back my stash of porn, not that I have any. Heck, I could be here to possibly even kill you. I could be here to just talk with you. I could be here to just annoy you. I could be here to ogle Conan as she is very beautiful. Conan shuddered slightly in disgust. Pain said coldly, his emotionless eyes revealing one emotion for the first time, Madara. Enough games. Fury. Beneath his mask, Tobi smirked at how he always managed to get under Pain's skin. Who said we're playing games? I could be here just to socialize. He thought about it. Pain muttered lowly, staring blankly at Tobi, your idea of socializing is twisted at best. Though there aren't many ranked shinobi left these days, Tobi offered a small sneer before saying, let's get down to business, shall we? With the loss of both Sasori and Deidara, we will need a new member to join us. However, I have a possible candidate. Pain questioned, who? A former Konoha shinobi by the name of Hiriko. Though finding him may prove to be quite bothersome as he is quite elusive. Though it is nothing Zetsu can't handle. Tobi responded. Pain shifted his gaze to look deeply into Tobi's only visible eye and said, very well, I will leave that matter to you. However, what will we do about the Ichibi? We never truly finished the sealing of its chakra. With a menacing flash, Tobi's Sharingan said, leave the Ichibi. We only really need a fraction of its chakra anyway. Pain only said, I see. In response. With his eyes growing more interested in this topic, the masked Uchiha said, now onto the matter of the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. Pain and Conan's eyes narrowed slightly at the curiosity in his voice. Leave the Kyuubi Jinchuriki to me, Pain. And before you ask why I want you to leave the Kyuubi to me. It's quite simple. I plan on converting the boy to our cause. Tobi stated. Conan's and Pain's eyes widened slightly before returning to their expressionless states. And why do you want him to join us? Akatsuki's ring-eyed figurehead had to ask. My reasons are my own, Pain. Tobi replied icily, but if you must know. I have taken quite the interest in the boy. I believe that with him on our side, our plans will accelerate exponentially. With a thoughtful hum, Pain said, I felt we needed his Bijuu's power. Tobi said, and I know one person who has at least 4 tails of the Kyuubi's chakra. Don't worry, judging by how much power the Kyuubi has, we would only need at least 4 to 6 tails. As I said before, we only truly need at least a fraction of its true power. Nothing more, nothing less. I thought he and a few other monks resided in a temple. What was the name of the boy? I think it's Sora? Uchiha, wearing a mask, thought idly. Pain spoke in a tone that suggested a judge convicting someone, saying, do what you will, Madara. I am only concerned with our plans of creating the perfect Bijuu weapon. Soon, this world will know peace. Through Pain. Tobi simply shook his head at Pain's conceit, and a flash of Sharingan appeared on his face. The next sentence in his voice was cold and mean. Regardless, tell the others to steer clear of the Uzumaki boy. He is mine to deal with. Also, you'd best remember just who you were talking to, Pain. You may have the eyes of God, but your power is meaningless compared to the might of Uchiha Madara. The masked Uchiha murmured. In the meantime, the genuine Uchiha Madara sensed a sudden identity crisis in the afterlife. And intended to defame it. He vowed to track down and completely destroy whoever was causing this feeling. Let's go back to the story. After finishing his speech, Tobi started to fade away into a whirling tornado. It's time to visit Itachi, he thought, and then his form vanished entirely. An oppressive quietness pervaded the room. Conan glanced around to make sure she and Pain were really alone. It is clear, Conan, my paths have this entire area under their watch. You are free to speak your mind. Pain replied. That man. We should remain wary of him, Nagato. I feel as if he is merely using us. Conan responded. The man with the rings around his eyes just closed his eyes and said, it doesn't matter to me. If he is really using us, then we have to figure out a way to use him without him knowing. This world will have peace one way or another. Conan sighed and nodded silently. Still though, how will we deal with Madara when, and if he betrays us? She inquired. Pain just stayed silent for a few minutes, then he started talking. Then we will inflict pain on him. He said. The ring. Eyed Man simply turned and stalked back inside to lay his paths to rest after saying that. Conan, apparently pleased with his answer, silently trailed behind him. But neither of them noticed Zetsu's head slowly moving from where Pain had been standing. White Zetsu muttered, Tobi was right to give us the assignment of mostly spying on Pain. Yes, but with the death of Sasori, our talents will now be split between observing Pain and spying on others. Said Black Zetsu. White Zetsu remarked, I'm sure we can do it. Of course we can. Our abilities are among the best for spying in the entire elemental nations, Black Zetsu said with a nod of approval. Right. Now let's get back to spying on Pain. Remember to conceal your chakra. Right. Zetsu broke off their conversation and vanished into the earth. One was to stay behind and keep spying on Pain, and the other was to go and report back to Tobi. Tsunade sipped from a bottle of sake while lounging on her office couch, smiling smugly. It's true what they say, the blonde Senju laughed merrily as she sipped her priceless sake. Sake tastes much better when you're feeling upbeat and at ease. The original disdain was met with glares from the shadow clones of Tsunade, who were completing her paperwork. They were also craving some fucking sake. But Tsunade's good fortune ended when Kaharu, Homura, and the village elder came into her office without even ringing the doorbell. That is extremely impolite. The two elders scowled at the sake in Tsunade's hand and cast a dismal glance at her while the Senju employed clones to complete her paperwork. Tsunade didn't give a damn about the disappointed looks they were giving her. Senju fucking Tsunade, that was her. A Godem Hokage and a Sanin. She was free to do whatever the hell she pleased. Tsunade ignored the elder's disapproving glances as she sat down in her chair, finished her sake, and banished her clones. Tsunade, eager to end this, asked, What do you two want? Homura parted his lips to speak after clearing his throat. But it was Kaharu who spoke first. This is about the Jinchuriki Tsunade. Not only did you promote him to Jonin, but you also sent him outside the village when Akatsuki is sure to go after him. What on earth were you thinking? And now we are hearing that the boy has a fiancé. What is the meaning of this? Kaharu asked, glaring at the Senju. Tsunade just raised a slender eyebrow. Really? You barged into my office over this? And what the hell do you mean, what am I thinking? She asked composedly, despite the fact that her tone was laced with a hint of rage. Homura made the choice to speak out. We simply believe that the boy is much too young to have been promoted to Jonin. We also believe that in order to keep the boy safe, he must never leave the village walls. Should Akatsuki get their hands on the boy, then there is no telling what will happen. The blonde-haired Senju said, he beat Kakashi in less than 30 minutes. Jiraiya himself has admitted that Naruto is stronger than him. And as for his fiancé? You have nothing to worry about as long as you don't provoke her or Naruto. Tsunade just stared blankly at the elders. The boy's accomplishments do not matter. Kaharu snapped. What matters is that we have our Jinchuriki under our control. Giving him a promotion is giving him too much freedom. But allowing him to maintain his relationship with his fiancée is unacceptable. We need the boy's loyalty to remain with the village and us as a whole. Therefore, we demand that the he and the girl be separated at once. The elderly lady said. Shiroi was suddenly driven to destroy Konoha village as she was back in Suna. And to subject the village elders to centuries of torture. The girl with white hair blinked, then decided that she would, in her mind, destroy Konoha countless times over. A few miles away from Suna, Naruto, in the meantime, felt the sudden urge to pull an Itachi and massacre everyone in Konoha. He blinked without giving it any attention. Tension was in the air after Kaharu concluded her speech. And seeing the barely contained rage in Tsunade's eyes, Homura swallowed. Kaharu. I believed we had decided not to intervene in the boy's relationship with the girl. Homura thought, a little panicked. He had no animosity toward Naruto whatsoever. He believed the boy had a positive influence on his own grandson, Udon. Ultimately, he was initially concerned because he was aware that Udon held the boy in high regard. However, he started to see Naruto as more than just a Jinchuriki after hearing Udon speak only good things about the boy and his beliefs. Though he remained of the opinion that a Jinchuriki ought to be subdued, he had little personal animosity toward Naruto. He was actually only here because he thought it was unsafe for a Jinchuriki to run around and because the boy's promotion had come much too soon. Particularly when there are people like Akatsuki around. Tsunade whispered, Elder Kaharu. Did you just demand something from your Hokage? Kaharu gave the slug princess a cold look and said, and if I did? Tsunade bellowed, you obviously do not know your place. I am the Hokage. You are merely elders. You are only mean to advise or give suggestions to the Hokage. The two of you obviously forgot that this is a dictatorship. There will be no demands. Tobi. Sensei obviously has given you two more freedom than he should have. But listen to me very carefully. If you dare to do anything against Naruto or Shiroi, then I will execute the both of you at the front gates of the village. Are we clear? The Senju hissed, her voice icy with rage. Tsunade was releasing killing intent, and Homura swallowed. He did not take retirement from shinobi service for years well. He used to be able to withstand multiple Jonin's intent to kill. Now that he was retired, though, he would hardly be able to carry out the murderous intent of a newly promoted Jonin. The terrifying aspect was, not even her full killing intent was being used by Tsunade. It seems Kaharu was able to overlook the intention to kill, though. Not by much, though, since a cold sweat appeared on the back of her neck. Kaharu remarked, you cannot just threaten your advisor Tsunade. Tsunade just smiled. Oh really? Tell me, if I were to order your execution, do you think that the people of this village will question why you are being executed? Kaharu answered, of course they would. No. Homura knew the villagers could be naive, so he reasoned that they wouldn't. The villagers would have gone crazy if Tsunade had just told them that they were secretly planning to overthrow the village, asking for their blood without posing any queries. Tsunade's smile grew wider, and Kaharu started to worry. However, she became calmer when Tsunade did nothing and the blonde Senju just scowled at the elders. Regardless, what I do with Naruto is none of your concern. You are only mean to advise me, not order me around. Now get out of my office. Kaharu was interrupted, Tsunade, or dare you? As Tsunade once more expressed her desire to kill. Tsunade's voice rose just above a whisper, but her words were clearly audible as she said, Elder Kaharu. You need to understand your role. Now exit my office. The fair-haired Senju exclaimed, her voice now filled with enough ice to repeatedly freeze hell. Kaharu cleared her throat of a lump. Before long, her pride got the better of her, and she spoke up to reprimand Tsunade. However, Homura grabbed her by the shoulder and dragged her from the room. We apologize for disturbing your privacy, Hokage. Sama. Homura said politely. Tsunade just stared out her window at the village, not answering. She grinned broadly as soon as she heard the door close. After making clones, she settled back into her chair and let them handle her paperwork. She took out a bottle of sake and started downing it right away. It was great being Hokage sometimes. Sasuke gave a scowl. Tia gave a glare. Sasuke scowled even more. Tia just glared even harder at the boy with the black hair. Kabuto laughed as he observed them. Come now. Kabuto said, the two of you can glare at each other all day. One of you is bound to get bored eventually. It doesn't matter if I get bored, bitch. If I get bored, I'll just go to your lab, grab something that looks like your fucking sex toy, come back and shove down this bitch's throat, Tia glared at the teenager wearing glasses. Kabuto appeared insulted, and Sasuke's face turned green. Kabuto grinned a little and said, "Regardless, I'm going to go now. Enjoy yourselves, you two." After glaring at Kabuto's back, Sasuke turned to face Tia, only to have her hand come up with a fist. For a few moments, the Uchiha held his face in agony as he skidded back several meters. He lowered his hands and glared at Tia, his expression uncannily calm. With clenched teeth, he questioned, "What did you do that for?" Her response was a simple, "I'm bored." She smirked and said, "I need to do something about the boredom." Tia concluded with a bloodthirsty grin, "Plus I want to get some training done. For the next hour or so. Your ass is mine, bitch." As Sasuke was about to reply, Tia swung past him and nicked his shoulder with her talons, forcing him to roll to the side. With a glare, Sasuke silently pulled out his blade. "Uchiha, come on. Don't let me down," Tia exclaimed, a big smile on her face. Flapping her wings, the bird-like girl took off in the direction of the Uchiha. Her claws are already shining, ready to take his head off his shoulders. Sasuke dodged, letting the girl pass right in front of him. Dozens of lightning-infused senbons shot in Tia's direction as he channeled lightning chakra into his hand. With a growl, Tia enveloped her body in her wings, absorbing Yuki's energy in the process. The girl with dark pink hair grinned slightly as the lightning senbons bounced off her. "Come on, Uchiha-kun," she laughed. "That snake pedo is always singing praises of your skills. Don't tell me that this is all you have. If so, then you will never have your revenge against your brother." She made fun. Sasuke's desire to kill increased dramatically in an instant. Darkly, Sasuke said, "I won't hold back any longer." With a ferocious smile, Tia exclaimed, "That's the spirit, Uchiha." With a wide smile, "Let's start this fucking show," she exclaimed as she leapt, and Sasuke followed suit. Sasuke and Tia concluded their sparring session several hours later. There were burns, scorches, cracks, and rubble all over the room. The Kyuubi would have been impressed by the amount of destruction in the room. Albeit just marginally. Sasuke was kneeling on the ground in the middle of the field, panting. Tia was panting in front of him as well, her glare directed at the Uchiha. Tia said with a tone of annoyance, "Tay. Our fights always end like this." And on her knees, and her breathing was labored. Sasuke gave a grumpy, "HN." Footsteps sounded before Tia could counter. Argument. A silky, smooth, and amused voice said, "I wish the two of you would stop destroying rooms whenever the two of you fought. It is quite bothersome to replace them." Tia just huffed, but Sasuke scowled as he glared over in the direction of the voice. With a scowl, Sasuke said, "Orochimaru." His Sharingan idly spinning. With a sly grin, Orochimaru's yellow-slitted eyes glinted with malice and a lust for power. The man who resembled a snake said, "Kukuku, hello Sasuke. Kun. Tia. Chan. It's good to see the two of you are progressing well." His eyes never left Sasuke's Sharingan. What beautiful eyes. With his gaze finally moving away from Sasuke's, Orochimaru said, "And you, Tia. Chan. How have you been?" Tia gave the snake Sannin a scowl. "I'm fine, although I am a bit worried that you ripped Kabuto's ass apart last night. I'm pretty sure I saw him limping out of here." She sighed. Orochimaru just grinned, knowing full well how much she enjoyed picking people's skins. "You need not worry for Kabuto. He is fine, he's only a bit tired because of a small favor I asked of him." Tia teased, "Did you ask him to revive your limp dick?" Sasuke noticed the glint of irritation that appeared in Orochimaru's eyes. And he couldn't help but grin a little. But as quickly as that irritation appeared, it disappeared, and the Sannin was grinning again. "Regardless of the favor I asked of Kabuto, I merely came to see what all the noise was. I'll be taking my leave, and Sasuke. Kun, prepare for a sparring session with me later in the afternoon," Orochimaru said before he left the room. As she watched the Sannin exit the room, Tia's lips thinned. She let go of the shiver she had been holding in until she was certain Sannin had left the room. She hissed, her eyes glaring fiercely down the hallway that Snake Sannin walked down. That fucker give me the fucking creeps. She detested the fact that she could never help but feel even a hint of fear from that man. Even for a brief instant. Sasuke gave a grumpy, "HN. So tell me. When are we leaving that snake bastard?" asked Tia. "We?" asked Sasuke inquiring. Tia stared at the Uchiha. "Don't think I didn't forget, motherfucker. You promised to help me with my revenge, provided I help you with yours. You just better uphold your end of the fucking bargain. Otherwise there is gonna be one less Uchiha in the world." She yelled in danger. With his Sharingan spinning erratically, Sasuke mocked, "Fine then." He continued, "I have a plan to escape him, but it will require him to be at his weakest. Once that opportune moment has come, I'll end him." Tia asked blandly, "And what am I gonna do during this time?" With a bland expression, Sasuke said, "You will be making sure that nobody interrupts my fight with Orochimaru." Tia laughed, "Oh, so I'm a bodyguard? When I fight with Orochimaru, my focus and attention will be solely on him. I won't be able to defend against a surprise attack, since my attention will be on Orochimaru. That's where you come in." The final explanation was given by Uchiha. Tia moaned, "Tay whatever," before turning and going down the hallways. "Where are you going?" Tia angrily demanded, "Hunting. I'm fucking bored. Make sure you have a fire-style jutsu ready, you stupid Uchiha. Because once I get back from my hunt, you're cooking my fucking food." Before gently flapping her wings and disappearing into the hallways. Sasuke scoffed at her withdrawn form. To be honest, most of the time he didn't even know what to think of the girl. She irritated me more than Sakura and Ino combined. No, forget about it. Sakura and Ino were the most annoying people there was. Perhaps Karen, but at least Karen possessed that unique chakra. Regarding Tia, he respected her fighting ability because it was on par with his. He detested her just as much as he respected her. He only put up with her because she had promised to help him exact his revenge in exchange for his aid in getting her own. He realized that it was a small price to pay. They were partners. Not a thing more. But even so. When Naruto landed on the Cage's balcony, he smiled. It was precisely a few minutes ago that he had arrived in Suna, and he was relieved to discover that he had not spent as much time in Uzuhaven as he had first believed. The blonde was excited to give Gaara the gifts he had brought for his old friend, who had arrived just as the sun was beginning to rise. He amassed enough wealth from Uzuhaven to keep Suna afloat for a few years. Furthermore, it accounted for merely 5% of the actual contents of the floating island. The blonde found that unbelievable, but who was he to object? With the intention of surprising her friend, the blonde opened the balcony door silently. He grinned like a fox and slipped inside without making a sound. But what he saw before him made his eyes enlarge to the size of dinner plates. He was perplexed and shocked. Gaara's lap had Yui, who was supposed to be sleeping, straddling it. Gaara's other hand was trailing down her shoulder, getting closer to her breasts as he held one hand around her waist. Naruto's keen senses allowed him to hear the little slurping sounds coming from their lips as the two locked in a passionate kiss. He was so startled that he failed to see the sealing scroll he was holding slowly fall out of his hand and hit the ground, producing a gentle thud. Gaara and Yui stopped what they were doing and turned their heads in his direction at that soft noise. After a few moments of intense staring, it was Naruto who finally broke the ice by clearing his throat. He apologized, "I'm, sorry for the interruption," before grabbing the scroll, heading out of the room, closing the balcony door, and running out of there as fast as a fireman. With a sigh of relief, Naruto leapt from rooftop to rooftop, happy that he was outside the Cage's structure. It was extremely awkward to walk in on one of your friends just getting weird. The blonde thought he had never felt so uncomfortable in his entire life. He just knew that he wouldn't be able to look Gaara in the face for very long. The blonde made the decision to return to the hotel where he and Shiroi were lodging. He concluded that she ought to be aware of his arrival. Gaara and Yui already knew, so it would be wise to inform the others as well. But his first destination was Shiroi. He wanted to see her because, first of all, she was his fiancée. After jumping through a few more rooftops, the blonde finally landed in front of the hotel. Stepping up the stairs, he entered his shared room with Shiroi in silence as he walked in casually. His gaze swept across the space, the lump on the bed, and a mop of silvery white hair perched at the top. With a small smile, he walked into the room. He took Altair from where he had been sitting by his side and set the knife against the wall. He undressed and hung his scarf and robes haphazardly from the room's coat hanger. He took off his boots and tucked them neatly beside Shiroi's. He took off his dark orange mesh shirt, folded it up neatly, and set it down by the foot of the bed. He took off his trousers so that he was only wearing boxers and put them in the same place as his shirt. He slowly closed his eyes as he lay gently next to the girl with white hair, allowing himself to sleep in spite of the sun coming up. Shiroi started to huddle in closer to him. "Naruto," she muttered, her lips curving into a smile. Her eyes flickered open, meeting the blonde's half-lidded gaze. She inquired, "When did you get back?" Naruto replied softly, lowering his eyelids a little, "Just now." With a slight nod, the white-haired girl said, "Just rest for now. I expect to hear the full story when you wake." She closed her eyes and pulled herself closer to her. Naruto grinned at the sight of a sleeping Chachazero and saw a sliver of green curled up in Shiroi's arms. Before letting sleep take over, the blonde planted a gentle kiss on Chachazero's head and on the white-haired girl's lips. When Naruto woke up, he moaned. He let out a long, drawn-out yawn and then surveyed the space. "What time is it?" he pondered. Kyuubi replied, "It's 7 minutes to 10 o'clock. "Many thanks, Q." With a smile, the blonde got out of bed. "Hello, how is Shiroi-chan doing?" Naruto inquired, observing the bed vacant. "When she left the room, I heard her murmuring something making break fest," Kyuubi responded. After putting on his robes and setting Altair by his side, Naruto froze. "Shiroi-chan is preparing food?" he questioned slowly. With an elevated eyebrow, the giant fox replied, "Yeah, I don't see the problem here. Do you recall the last time Shiroi-chan attempted cooking?" Deadpanning, the blonde said. Remembering, Kyuubi exclaimed, "Yeah, I still don't see the..." Oh fuck. All Naruto could do was hold a deadpan expression while imagining the Kyuubi breaking out in a cold sweat. I guess that explains why she didn't come back after an hour. Naruto jerked, and the blonde took a cautious step in the direction of the door. He opened the door slowly, but he had to wait little longer to hear the sounds of battle. "Back, you wild beast. Back, I say. Damn it. Why is it that everything I cook comes to life and tries to fucking kill me?" Naruto heard Shiroi scream and then a monstrous roar of rage and hunger. Oh shit. Something crashed. I am not paying for that. Naruto blinked once, twice, and a third time before fully opening the door and proceeding to the hotel's kitchen, which was down the hall. He saw right away what kind of. His fiancée was fighting a beast. It was a light brown color and had a blob-like appearance. It featured large hollowed out holes for a mouth and sockets for eyes. But the most unsettling aspect of all was the smell reminiscent of pancakes? How in the world did Shiroi do this with pancakes? This something. With a roar, the pancake monster attempted to eat Shiroi. Shiroi, though, leapt over it and landed elegantly behind it. Regretfully, the beast crashed into a lamp and the television set when Shiroi ducked. The girl with white hair exclaimed, pointing a finger at the broken furniture, "I'm not paying for that either." Naruto turned his head as he heard giggling. He noticed Chachazero giggling uncontrollably while perched on a bookshelf. With a sudden crash, the blonde spun around to witness Shiroi force the pancake monster to smash into a wall. With only a slight moan, the pancake-shaped creature started to creep toward the girl with white hair. "Know your place," Shiroi yelled, repeatedly stamping her foot on it. Naruto laughed, saying he couldn't help it. "Naruto, don't just stand there. Help me find a way to kill this thing." Shiroi yelled as her head snapped in his direction. The pancake monster let out a groan and attempted to stand, but Shiroi repeatedly stamped on it. "I said know your place." With a sly smile on his face, Naruto said, "Shiroi-chan, why don't you just blast it with a Sero?" Shiroi blushed in embarrassment after blinking. She whispered, "Why didn't I think of that? Seems even you were prone to dizzy moments, Shiroi." "Chan," laughed Naruto. Shiroi quivered. Her experiencing moments of vertigo? Like a whore. A vampire's pride would not permit such a thing. Among the most formidable and potent yokai to have ever walked the planet, she was a vampire. It was unacceptable to even consider that she, of all people, could experience vertigo. She would have none of it. She scowled at the pancake monster. All these damn things were to blame. Therefore, it would be disposed of. She smiled menacingly as red Yuki formed in her hand and she gestured at the moaning creature. All the pancake could manage was a curious grr. Prior to Shiroi's Sero blasting it. His brief life ending in dust in a matter of seconds. With a contented grin, Shiroi turned abruptly to face the blonde and grabbed onto her arm. With a sweet smile, she said, "Naruto. Kun, let's order some room service, shall we?" Though Naruto silently nodded, he was secretly curious as to why Shiroi seemed a little strange. She was not flawed in any way, but there was something unique about her. The blonde decided to check her chakra for anything odd while the girl with the silvery white hair went to order room service. Nope. Nothing about her chakra was out of the ordinary. With a shrug, the blonde dismissed those ideas from his head and observed his fiancée return to the room. "I didn't know what you wanted, so I just ordered some sandwiches and coffee." With a nod, Naruto said, "I don't mind coffee or sandwiches, Shiroi." Chan. With a smile, the girl moved toward the blonde more slowly. "Shiroi. Chan?" A dubious Naruto inquired. Shiroi just grinned and licked her pointed teeth. With a tiny laugh, Naruto turned his head and showed off his neck. The blonde experienced the sharp, dull pain of Shiroi's fangs puncturing his neck right away, along with the undoubtedly enjoyable feeling of her sucking his neck. The blonde sighed slightly, enjoying the sensation of his fiancé's lips sucking on his throat. Shiroi kept doing this for a few more moments before letting go of his neck. Naruto kissed her lips briefly after petting her cheek. But the girl pulled at his scarf, drawing him closer as they kissed more intensely. He opened his mouth as he felt her tongue touch his, letting her tongue run wild inside his mouth. Though it didn't really matter to him, he could taste his blood on her tongue. A tiny bit of blood appeared on his tongue as he felt her fangs scratch it. As soon as Shiroi realized this, she moaned at the taste of the blood as her tongue whirled around his. Not to be outdone, Naruto skillfully probed the insides of her mouth and pushed her tongue back into hers. His tongue twirling around inside her mouth. With a trail of saliva joining them, he withdrew before it broke. Leaning in closer, Shiroi started nibbling and licking the blonde's ears, causing the blonde to sigh. She gave him a sly grin, grated her crotch, and grunted a little in a sensual way. He heard him moan once more, and just as she was about to smile smugly, she felt him start kissing her neck and pushing his crotch up. She groaned and swore at the fact that they had on clothes. His robes were being slowly undone by her hands when there was a knock on the door. Her eye quivered, and the slits in her eyes grew thinner as she became enraged at the person who had the audacity to try to stop her. Her teeth grew longer, but Naruto just grinned and gave her a cheek kiss, sensing her rage. Her eyes still held the threat of death to anyone who broke them, even though her anger had somewhat subsided. Chan! Exclaimed Naruto. Floating atop the blonde's head, Chacha exclaimed, "Yes, Naruto." Chama. Naruto saw that she was holding a barf bag, and they knew that she had seen him, with Shiroi on the verge of attacking. "Can you answer the door, Chan?" He asked with a sheepish chuckle. I, sir," exclaimed the green-haired doll with joy. Shiroi started, "Chacha, I give you permission to chop up the person who dared to interrupt." Immediately, a big smile appeared on the doll's face. With a playful expression, Naruto watched as the small doll drifted away. He said, his voice tinged with concern, "Don't you think that's a bit overboard? Not to mention that Chan could end up killing that person." With a wave, Shiroi dismissed him, saying, "Nope. I said cut up, not kill." Naruto started to say something, but he was interrupted by a scared scream coming from the door. A few moments afterward, there was giggling and a growing distance between the screams and giggles. Before getting up, Naruto blinked once, twice, and a third time. I think the person who was giving us room service dropped the sandwiches near the door. He stated, I'm just going to go check. He continued. Naruto went to check on the door, and Shiroi just shrugged and closed her eyes. She pondered what would occur next. She acknowledged and accepted the fact that Yui would remain with Gaara. She was aware that she would have to put up with that girl with pink hair for a few more days. Shiroi, to be honest, thought the girl was funny. In a way, she thought it was highly entertaining. Sakura found it amusing to make her angry. If the girl took her anger too far and she ended up beating her to within an inch of her life, then she enjoyed the reaction she got out of her. That was just a very pleasant added benefit for her. She heard Naruto come back into the room and saw him settle back into the couch. He showed her the 4 plastic wrapped sandwiches and said, well, the sandwiches are all right. But the coffee? I'm afraid the janitor is going to be picking that up. He was joking. Shiroi laughed a little. After a brief break for lunch, Naruto shared with him the events of his brief visitation in Arashi's tomb. Saying Shiroi was taken aback would be an understatement. Such a meeting with the Nidaime Hokage was unthinkable for her. And it was truly amazing to learn soon after that he is your great grandfather. She inquired about the Nidaime's quality and other things. How formidable he was, and the experience of facing him off. Shiroi was astounded by the story, and Naruto responded to the best of his abilities. To be honest, she didn't believe that the Nidaime on top of the tsunamis were real. However, based on Naruto's account, it appeared to be quite authentic. They conversed for a few more minutes before heading out of the hotel. As they strolled through Suna's streets, they observed how animated everyone was. The two were greeted with waves from the villagers, and even the village ninja bowed to show respect. At that, Shiroi grinned, while Naruto just grinned. The two looked up to see Kakashi staring at them from his perch atop a streetlight. Ah, there you two are. Naruto said, Kakashi. Senpai. Shiroi just nodded courteously. So did you two sleep well enough? With a courteous smile, Naruto replied, we slept fine, Kakashi. Senpai. Shiroi just shot Kakashi an indifferent glance. I'd love to stay and chat Naruto, Shiroi. San. But I'm afraid I've lost track of Sakura, so I'm on a hunt to find her. Kakashi continued, I came to find the two of you, so I can ask if you've seen her anywhere around here. He concluded. At the mention of Sakura, Naruto's eyes narrowed a little, and he nodded slowly, declaring in silence that he hasn't seen her anywhere. Shiroi simply chuckled silently, wondering what mischief the pink-haired girl might have gotten herself into. Perhaps the rape was occurring against her will? The very thought almost made her smile. For a few moments, Kakashi hummed as he tried to recall where he had last seen Sakura. Actually, now that I think about it, when was the last time he saw Sakura playing that strength game? Maybe he ought to look around that area. I'll go see if I can find Sakura. I just remembered where I last saw her, Kakashi said, turning, then coming to a stop. Before vanishing in a flash, Kakashi said, by the way, Gaara says to be in his office when you have time. You heard Kakashi. Senpai. Looks like Gaara wants me to visit him. Naruto said, what will you be doing while I'm with Gaara, Shiroi? Chan? He inquired. I really wanted to spend the day with Yui, Shiroi pouted, waving him off. I'll probably try to find Yui and hang out with her. After chuckling, Naruto said, I'll come find you when I'm done with my conversation with Gaara. He then kissed Shiroi on the lips before vanishing from view. What to do, what to do, what to do? Shiroi hummed thoughtfully. She pondered in her head. When she saw Yui's black hair, her expression brightened. With great care, she slipped behind the succubus with black hair and peered over her shoulder. She merely said, hey Yui. Yui was startled instantly, causing the black-haired girl to squeak with surprise and take a small jump back. She put her hand over her heart and exclaimed, S. Shiroi. Don't do that. With a small giggle, Shiroi said, so what are you doing? With a slight scowl, Yui said, well, I was observing the villagers. Before you startled me. With a small sneer, Shiroi said, "What do you mean by observing? Surely you know the villagers well enough." Yui gasped. "It's something you won't understand, Shiroi. After all, you don't live in a village." She replied. "Oh? Try me. I'm living in Konoha with Naruto. Kun, so please do tell me why you're observing the villagers and why I wouldn't understand." Shiroi said with an elegant eyebrow raise, though it sounded more like she was demanding that Yui tell her. "When you look at these villagers, what do you see?" Yui asked, letting out another sigh. Shiroi blinked and glanced at the villagers chatting among themselves. Her eyes went glassy as she answered honestly, but it wasn't Asuna citizens she was seeing. "I see lowly and ignorant humans. I see people who take what they have for granted and aren't satisfied with what they have. I see villagers who cannot let go of their hate." She projecting herself onto the Konoha villagers. She gave a slight snarl just thinking about Konoha and their treatment of Naruto. Her snarl went unnoticed by Yui. "I see villagers who can smile and enjoy the peace they have at the moment. The 5 great villages have been in 3 wars, and because of that, they were able to continue to hold on to both hope and strength. Despite their pain of losing a loved, they are still able to push forward. And those who can't are helped by those who have." Yui continued. "You are aware of how they treated Gaara as a child, right?" Shiroi asked slowly, her eyes narrowing. "I know. And for a time I despised them. But Gaara told me to let go of my hatred, since it would only do more harm than good. So I just let my hatred go." The cage is black haired girlfriend said, nodding. Shiroi's eyes flashed blood red as she narrowed them into slits. Give up? Was letting go of her hatred really that simple? No. Despite her best efforts, she was unable to get over her animosity toward the Konoha villagers. She would put up with them. She was able to address them directly, converse with them in an impartial manner, and stand in their presence. She could put up with them, and she would, for the sake of Naruto. To pardon them, though? Not at all. Get off. By chance. Should the Konoha villager give her a reason, even a tiny one, too, she would then display a genuine demon brat to them. As they called Naruto with such affection. She would put up with them until then. She would tolerate them for the sake of Naruto. Even though she hoped that one of them would give it a shot. In order to show them what hell is really like. Anko smiled while scarfing down another plate of dango. She wolfed down all of the dango on the plate, almost finishing it. Kurenai gave her best friend's actions a small shake of her head across from her. The black-haired woman deadpanned, "Geez Anko, you'll end up getting fat." With a smile on her face, Anko said to her pregnant friend, "Oh Nai. Chan, you know it's nearly impossible for kunoichis to get fat. What with the calories we burn off." Kurenai gave the purple-haired Jonin a small snort and a smile. "How's has it been, Anko?" Anko picked at her teeth with a toothpick and said, "Oh you know, same old, same old. Working at the interrogation department with Inoichi and Ibiki. Training in the forest of death. Teasing my poor little Ruka. Chan, eating dango. Did I mention eating dango?" She laughed. "Honestly, Anko, you and your obsession with dango. I honestly will never understand," Kurenai said with a small smile. "Dango is the food of the gods." The childishly purple-haired dango enthusiast exclaimed. Kurenai deadpanned, a certain blonde-haired recently promoted Jonin would disagree. Anko curtly said, "Please, my Ototo obviously hasn't tasted the mighty dangos." In a serious manner. The red-eyed woman continued, "Naruto would argue that ramen is much better." Anko exclaimed, "Don't worry, I will soon corrupt Naruto into the ways of dango." She imagined a number of scenarios in which he transforms Naruto into her ways and he is forever grateful to her. Anko cleared her throat silently, and Kurenai laughed nervously, noticing the gleam in her eyes. "Speaking of Naruto, you never really explained why you see him as a little brother." Anko grinned slightly and let out an almost sorrowful sigh. "Remember that time I disappeared for 2 months?" Anko asked. Kurenai nodded slowly, recalling that Anko had been absent for 2 months. She didn't give it much thought at first. However, she went straight to the Sandaime about this after the 3rd week without speaking to her. Only for the elderly Hokage to inform her that Anko was a mission with a long duration. The purple-haired Kunoichi clarified, "Well, I was in the village the entire time. As a temporary Anbu. I was never really on a long-term mission." Kurenai gave Anko a slight narrowing of the eyes. It all began shortly after yet another group of villagers were badmouthing me for being the snake bitch. She grumbled, "I wanted to get away from the village for a while. So I went to Sandaime. Sama if there was anything I can do to get away from the villagers." There were several missions he had, but they required a team. And who would work with the snake bitch? So Sandaime. Sama offered to let me in the Anbu temporarily. I accepted. Anko gulped down her sake. After that, my mission only included those that were only 2 miles away from the village. My temporary code name was Hubby 6. 2. It was during one of my assignments that I came across a mob of villagers beating down on our favorite and unfortunate Jinchuriki, Uzumaki Naruto. I immediately moved in and disbanded the villagers. They backed off quite quickly. After all, no one messes with the Anbu. Anko chuckled as he remembered the terrified faces of the. Since then, I found myself protecting the little brat for those 2 months. I read him bedtime stories, I gave piggyback rides, I made sure that his apartment was somewhat clean. And I enjoyed torturing the villagers that were brave enough to attack the kid in front of me. He was my precious little Odato. To him, I was Habine Chan. Then my temporary time in Anbu was done, and the council forbid me from ever making contact with the Gaki unless it involved shinobi-related business. And lit Naru Chan was only 5 at the time. Anko spoke with hazy eyes. With me gone, the villagers began the attacks on him again. But they weren't that lucky, since Weasel also caught them and brought them the interrogation department. And of course, I was Ibiki's apprentice at the time, so yeah. Ibiki kindly allowed me to practice on the poor bastards. And I must say, I fucking enjoy it. I had hoped that when Naruto became a genin I could take him under my wing. Her face became sneering. But Kakashi, she yelled, interfered with that, and I lost my chance of seeing Naru Chan again. The only time I ever got to see my little Odato again was during the Chunin exams. And he never even remembered the way I smelled. As a kid the Gaki always had a sharp nose. Yet he never remembered my scent. The scent of his Habine Chan. Anko whispered while staring at her sake bottle. I knew for he wouldn't remember me. After all, he was only 5 at the time, and you know that kids don't remember things when they grow up. Though that still didn't stop the pain I felt when he didn't remember me. Anko breathed deeply, but now. She smiled briefly, now that he's a jonin. Hey, I have a feeling that we might get sent on some missions together. And I look forward to it. Anko laughed. Kurenai gazed at her friend for a while before chuckling quietly. She teased, "You're a softie, aren't you, Anko?" Anko looked at Kurenai for a while before pouting. She whimpered, "Nai-chan. I'm the one who's supposed to tease you." But then a smile appeared on her face. She said, though she kept the last part to herself, "So. When is your little child due? I want to spoil the little baby already. And maybe corrupt him to my ways." Kurenai's left eye twitched, though, and she could still hear her friend. She answered, "I told you Anko, he isn't due for several more months. Hurry up you. So you can meet the strongest and most sexist kunoichi of Konoha." Mitarashi Anko. Anko sulked, "Dang it." She gave Kurenai a playful glare in the stomach. "Really, aside from Tsunade, who do you think is the strongest kunoichi in the Leaf Village? Share your opinions with me." Kurenai gave her friend a small laugh before giving Anko another plate of dango. She had not even had dinner with Anko in a very long time, and she was looking forward to having fun with her friend. She did, however, wonder when Anko would approach Naruto. Though she was thinking of many different scenes, she still wished Anko luck. For now, it was the best she could manage. The man dressed in Akatsuki stayed motionless and said nothing. His companion had already departed to search the forest for fish and other edibles. Right now, he was by himself. As well as his visitor. I can't put my finger on it, but there is something different about you, Itachi. Someone said something. The atmosphere filled with a cold, emotionless drawl as Tobi moved slowly into Itachi's field of vision. His Sharingan was a little brighter. Itachi remained silent for a few seconds before gradually opening his eyes. The answer was simple, Madara. As the wind blew, their robes fluttered and they gazed into each other's Sharingan eyes. Tobi gave a little laugh and said, "How interesting." Orochimaru sat on his throne and gave a rough cough. His coughing became more forceful and irregular, and his hands began to tremble. For a few moments, he held onto his chest and hissed in pain. He clenched his jaw, recalling how he had been affected by this. Oh my god, Sarutobi. Sensei, he thought, feeling hurt and enraged. He reached out shakily and picked up a tiny bottle filled with pills. He removed the cap gradually and extracted 2 pills. He put them in his mouth and took the pills without wetting them. He gasped in exhalation and extended his hand to grab a glass of water. With a swift swallow, he exhaled a sigh of relief. He experienced pain, and his body's dying effects subsided. He would have Sasuke's body very soon. And he would be able to learn every jutsu technique known to man, perhaps even discovering a treatment for his disease. Until he could shape Sasuke into the ideal body and vessel for his soul to reside in. And he would own every technique known to man. The thought of the possibilities alone made his mouth water. As an aside, it's about time Kabuto updated us on the health of his little pet. When the door opened, Orochimaru turned to face it as Kabuto strode into the room with a slight frown on his face. And Orochimaru said, "Kabuto." Kabuto raised his gaze upon hearing his name, Orochimaru. "Sama." The black-haired Sannin inquired, "How is our little pet?" With a slight frown, Kabuto replied, "His education has been going along nicely, and the training program you set up for it has worked wonders." With narrowed eyes, Orochimaru questioned, "Then why the frown?" "Ever since it read the word, freedom, from the dictionary. I've seen him giving longing looks to the exit of the base. And he has asked me several times, why he has never given a choice." Kabuto responded with a scowl. With a small frown, Orochimaru said, "That's not good. It seems we must teach him his place again. Tell F-43 that I intend to discipline later in the day." Shaking his head in humility, Kabuto said, "Hi Orochimaru." "Sama." With a sly smile on his face, he walked out of the room, picturing the punishment F-43 would face. Orochimaru grinned, remembering his pet. Yes, that was the best thing he had ever made. F-43 was a worthwhile investment of all the time, effort, and data that went into it. He'd made the ultimate weapon. Something with immense potential. A being that was far more intelligent than humans and animals combined. A creature of such immense intelligence that he was able to learn and quickly commit to memory everything that was taught to him. A creature that, while almost a beast in battle, was incredibly intelligent and almost human in conversation. What you can accomplish with a wild fox, Senju blood, and a sizable portion of the Kyuubi's chakra is simply astounding. However, despite all of the creature's merits, it lacked one thing that Orochimaru could never give it. Brutality. When it saw no justification for killing, it refused to do so. It just plain refused to kill for no apparent reason. For this reason, Orochimaru sealed the creature, meaning that if F-43 ever disobeys a clear command, the seal will activate and obliterate its heart. It was more cooperative in its studies and more willing to kill after that. It was still hesitant, though. When engaged in combat, it would deliberately shift the direction of its strikes to avoid killing its opponents. It never took advantage of the numerous opportunities it had to take out its target during combat. Even though his weapon was strong and potentially lethal, its full potential had always been denied by his reluctance to take the target out. The most detrimental aspect? Orochimaru attempted every technique in the book to make his weapon a lethal machine, but all of them failed. Ultimately, the project was likely doomed from the start. Nevertheless, 43 served a purpose, and as long as that purpose is served, he will not be eliminated. In addition, he's curious about what would transpire if F43 and the Kyuubi Jinchuriki clashed. The blood of a Senju and the chakra of a Kyuubi were combined to create F43, and Orochimaru was curious to find out what would happen if the two ever clashed. Should the two cross paths, a lot of things could go wrong. Orochimaru, though, was sure that Naruto would prevail. That brat had always been able to persevere through hardships, after all. The boy's summoning battle with his snakes? He managed to overcome it somehow. The boy's conflict with the boy from Inuzuka? He defeated him with sheer willpower and determination. His conflict with Neji Hyuga? With the same amount of will and determination, he defeated him as well. His conflict with Gaara? The same techniques once more. His brief altercation with Kabuto? He succeeded in seriously injuring his silver-haired aide. If Orochimaru discovered anything about the Uzumaki boy, it's that underestimating him would be a grave mistake. And if he understood correctly, Jiraiya and the boy were traveling for training. Orochimaru also had a suspicion that the boy was already powerful, though it's unclear just how strong. It wouldn't surprise Orochimaru if Jiraiya imparted all of his knowledge to the brat. The snake Sannin pondered what would happen if Sasuke and Naruto got into a fight. The last Uchiha was at least a low cage, and he was aware of Sasuke's immense power. Orochimaru was interested in Naruto's level, though, as he thought he might be on par with Sasuke or even lower. Orochimaru wasn't too concerned about the blonde going above and beyond that, though. He was aware that the council would have attempted to sway Naruto's training in order to prevent him from becoming overly powerful. Orochimaru almost gave a snort. Danzo and the elders in particular were targets of the council's constant attempts to maintain control over the village. With a snort, Orochimaru got off his throne slowly. The snake Sannin stalked down the corridors, slowly approaching the exist. His yellow eyes glinting, he was thinking of ways to discipline F43. And that was not encouraging. Hidan exclaimed, frustrated and bored, "I am fucking bored." Walking beside him, Kakuzu twitched slightly as his partner turned to face him. "Kakuzu, are we there yet?" inquired the Jushinist with silver hair. The hooded mercenary answered sharply, "No." With a curse under his breath, Hidan said nothing. After 5 minutes, the red-eyed Akatsuki member parted his lips. "Are we there yet?" "No." "Are we there yet?" Kakuzu replied once more, getting angrier with his partner, "No." For several minutes there was only silence, and Kakuzu loved it. He found silence to be both holy and exquisitely lovely. He would gladly and vigorously worship any god of silence, if such a god existed. For shinobi, silence was precious, as they lived in the shadows. That explains why he was so incredibly irritated with the majority of his allies. Deidara blew **T up and was always so loud. Sasori was quiet, so he could put up with him, but he wished the puppet master wasn't so fixated on puppets. He could put up with Kisame. It was just that Kisame talked to his opponents like old friends all the time. Zetsu? While he could put up with Black Zetsu, White Zetsu really got on his nerves. Konan? He liked Konan the most among the Akatsuki caste. She was silent, stoic, and reserved until someone spoke to her. Most importantly, based on what he had managed to learn, she was equally appreciative of silence as he was. At least it made life in the Akatsuki more tolerable. However, he shouldn't be shocked that belonging to the S-ranked criminal organization is nearly intolerable. Ultimately, they were initially merely a group of psychopathic murderers. Hidan's obnoxious voice snapped him out of his reverie with, "Are we there yet?" "No." He scowled in response. He wished he could simply rip the fucker's head off. He would still be speaking afterwards, which is an issue. "Are we there yet?" Kakuzu jerked a no. With frustration and impatience in his voice, Hidan exclaimed, "Why are we walking towards Lightning Country in the first place? Can't we just run there? It's not like we'll be tired." Kakuzu gasped. "As you know, leader. Sama ordered us to capture the Nibi Jinchuriki, but he was never specified an exact time limit." "I know that. Why are we going at such a slow pace?" The masked bounty hunter said, "We might run into a sizable bounty along the way." We haven't run into anyone for the last 2 fucking hours. Hidan yelled. Kakuzu bellowed, Hidan. Shut up. In a menacing manner. Fuck you, Kakuzu. If you promise to be silent, I will allow you to perform your damn ritual on the next bounty we find. Really? Kakuzu nodded silently, and Hidan fell silent. During this moment, Kakuzu closed his eyes and savored the quiet that descended upon them. He was so happy to be silent. It felt as though Kami had heard his prayers this time. Are we there yet? Kakuzu questioned whether it was feasible to stage his demise and give the impression that he had underestimated his adversary. Kakashi hummed and narrowed his eyes, taking in his surroundings. There were many unconscious villagers in the vicinity of last night's celebration, and there was a strong sake aroma. It was to be expected, given that the area with the greatest number of games was also the one that was most crowded during the festival. That being said, Kakashi was taken aback by the sheer number of drunken villagers. He noticed that everyone was groggily starting to wake up, and he raised an eyebrow. As soon as he saw a flash of pink, he turned to face that direction. Sakura was just starting to wake up when he found her. Her hair was a tangle of knots, and there were a few bags under her eyes. Kakashi sniffed a little, and she could definitely smell the sake. Her sigh of agony and annoyance startled him out of his reverie. Okay, so. It appears that his pupil had been drinking and was currently going through her first hangover. Unexpected but not surprising. He had observed Sakura and Shiroi's interaction. He had been closely monitoring the two ever since their altercation, in which Sakura attempted to harm her. Sakura in particular, given her volatile nature. He saw the slight clench in her fists and the flash of anger in her eyes whenever she looked directly at Shiroi. Though he was unsure of Sakura's issue, he hoped the girl with the pink hair wouldn't do something foolish like she did the previous time. He was just about in time to prevent Naruto from severing her head. Naruto could see the blonde's movements even though he was moving faster than most jonin. Furthermore, Kakashi has to admit that the speed at which the blonde moved startled him. Naruto started to feel more and more like his mother and father whenever he did something these days. It was somewhat frightful. Even so, he continued to watch Sakura closely and wondered why the pink-haired girl was so resentful of Naruto's fiancé. Other than jealousy, he was unable to come up with a response. His thoughts were interrupted by Sakura's slurred voice, Kakashi. Sensei? Yo. Kakashi answered, grinning widely as usual. Sakura held her head up and said, what happened last night? Kakashi said, why don't you tell me? And hummed, I'm not sure. Sakura moaned and replied, I'm not sure, her hand radiating green chakra. All I remember is that they brought out the sake last night. Tsunade. Sama told me a couple times that she wanted me to try sake one day. I always wondered why Tsunade. Sama loved sake so much, so I thought would try it out myself. Raising an eyebrow, Kakashi inquired, really? Well, did you like it? I don't want to drink sake anymore, if this is the result of it. She responded. Kakashi cracked a grin. Well, at least you know what it's like to have sake. Though, you may not have a taste for it, it'll grow on you if you drink every one in a while. Sakura swore and glared at her former teacher, saying, no way, I'm never drinking sake again. With an arched eyebrow, Kakashi teased, you say that now, but since you're Tsunade Sama's student, I just can't take you seriously on this matter. Sakura roared and clenched her fists as her eye twitched, Kakashi. Sensei. After saying, oh would you look at the time, gotta go. The gray-haired Jonin wasted no time in using a shunshin. Sakura gave a low growl and rose slowly to her feet. She yelled, running after the direct where she sensed the Jonin's chakra signature. Get back here. Shanaru. Just as Sakura came into sight, Kakashi just strolled out from behind a hot dog stand. The X. Enbu read his book with an orange cover and gave a small shake of his head. Disappointing Sakura, you can't even tell when it's a clone you're chasing after. He said, it makes me wonder just what Tsunade Sama was training you in. It also makes me wonder what all those private sessions you had with her was all about. The masked Jonin walked away, giggling into his hand as Kakashi sighed slightly and said, I'll save those thoughts for another time. Suddenly, he chirped, Right now I have to see if Naruto will allow his lust to consume him while he and Shiri are alone in the forest. Naruto and Shiroi had the urge to beat Jiraiya to death somewhere in Suna. Jiraiya, meanwhile, shivered in Tanzaku Town's hot springs and thought he should spend a few weeks away from his fiancée and student. He dismissed it, figuring it was nothing. Hyuga Neji was a man of honor and pride. It's true that he may have attempted to kill his cousin once or twice in his life and spent the better part of his life hating half of his family. However, he had long since made amends with his family and teammates. Since then, he has let go of the gloomy, hateful vibe he carried around and has instead warmed up a little bit with his teammates and the other Konoha 12. He had long since expressed regret to his teammates for the way he had treated them, albeit with some minor difficulties. Tenten simply slapped him on the shoulder and said he was forgiven, but Lee and Guy attempted to embrace him and drag him off to do something with his youth. When he disabled their chakra points and made them immobile, he put an end to that strategy. Despite knowing better than to attempt that again, the two eccentric shinobi persisted in attempting to enlist Neji in their training exercises. Apologizing to both of his cousins was the next item on his list. The Hyuga heiress simply waved him off and told him there was no need to apologize when he apologized to Hinata. She only stated that his misplaced rage and resentment were the reasons behind his actions. But Hanabi was a little tricky. Initially, Hinata's younger sister chose to ignore him. After a few days, she eventually started accepting his heartfelt apologies, and a week later, she started talking to him. Neji thought their relationship had healed after that. He soon came to regret thinking that he would be Hanabi's personal servant for the next month unless he offered a complete apology. It was exhausting. It was not enjoyable to serve an 8-year-old girl who was practically a princess. Particularly when that 8-year-old makes you put on a butler's uniform. Fortunately, just one person was aware of this, and Neji ensured that all witnesses were urged to block out everything they witnessed. On the other hand, it did turn into a bit of a secret joke among a few branch members. Neji's life improved after that, and it was all because of a certain blonde Jonin. Naruto owed Neji money, which he might never be able to pay back. Neji made the decision to do everything in his power to make up for Naruto's loss. Even if it meant that when the blonde turned Hokage, he would become his personal bodyguard. Neji had previously thought that Naruto might never rise to the rank of Hokage. Okay, destiny, but Naruto disproved him. Neji made the decision to take control of his own life after that. Although he is powerless to publicly address the caged bird seal, he could lighten the branch family's workload. He had taken on the role of the branch family's unofficial leader in a sense. He had also grown closer to his uncle Hiyashi, to the point where they would now see each other once a week. And to think that everything that occurred did so following his run in with Naruto. Even though he couldn't admit it to himself due to his pride, he was relieved that Day's Chunin exam defeat to Naruto. He was thrilled to see the person he belonged to so much when he learned that Naruto was making his way back to the village. Sadly, he was away on a mission the day the blonde came back, and since it was merely routine border patrol, he wouldn't be coming back the following day. Though he could wait, he was disappointed to learn that the blonde was already on a mission of her own. When he found out the blonde was actually engaged, he was shocked. To be honest, he never would have guessed that the blonde would be the first to find a permanent partner. The blonde was just too carefree and wild. However, it appears that he was incorrectly proven once more. The teenage Hyuga went back to the Hyuga compound with a newfound sense of patience, ready to wait for the blonde to return. But as he was passing by Hinata's room, he started to wonder what Yamanaka Ino was talking to Hinata about, so he reluctantly, listened in on their exchange. He was curious about what they were discussing, so when Naruto's fiancée entered the conversation, he assumed they were considering becoming friends. He was mistaken, though, because they actually intended to part ways. He was disappointed and furious at once. He was disappointed in Hinata because she was acting out of rage. He was also upset that the Yamanaka was taking advantage of his cousin's rage. He was not interested in Naruto getting engaged, and he had no idea why the Yamanaka family was so opposed to the idea. The only thing that mattered was that he had to stop this. In light of that, he decided to let Hiyashi know about Hinata's anger. Following that meeting, he was tasked with undermining every scheme that Hinata and the Yamanaka devised. He has been snooping on the two for the past 2 days after that. And they had already devised a number of plans. Neji had to palm those ones because they all inexplicably went wrong. Horribly. He had no idea plans could go so wrong, really. They obviously never considered the different thorns that would be in their path. An excellent illustration would be Naruto's estate. They attempted, for whatever reason, to enter the building undetected, and Neji was ready to move in to stop them. But it seems that someone, Naruto, installed containment seals that contained low-level lightning jutsu in addition to security seals. As a result, the lightning only struck them for 2 or 3 seconds before it stopped. Neji almost covered his ears, hearing Ino scream aloud about her messy hair, while Hinata just cleared her throat. They started brainstorming ideas after that and avoided going near Naruto's estate. While some of the different plans appeared to have potential, others were blatantly absurd or foolish. Neji ruined the ones that appeared to have the best chance of succeeding. Neji also found himself becoming increasingly amused as he undermined their schemes, making them more agitated and leading to disastrous plans. Observing them attempt to borrow a couple of ninja dogs so they could attack Shiroi upon receiving orders, only for those same dogs to attempt to dry hump them. The sign at the door, which the girls ignored, made him want to burst out laughing. All that said on the sign was, "Untrained dogs." Naturally, Neji wished he had brought popcorn. As the Inuzuka clan started to enter the building, curious about the noise, Neji made sure to subtly divert their attention until the girls left. They started meeting in more private settings as soon as they had suspicions that someone was spying on them. That brought about Neji's current predicament. Women's bathroom was the sign in front of the long-haired Hyuga, who was staring at it blankly. Neji jerked. After entering the restroom for some private planning, the two girls were regretfully forced to use it. 20 minutes had passed since then, and Neji knew they were hatching some plots in there. All he needed to do was figure out how to hear them. Neji glanced in both directions and cautiously moved toward the door, but as Anko passed by while whistling a catchy song, he sprang backward and dove into the bushes. Anko stopped and raised an eyebrow in Neji's direction as sweat streamed down his face. Anko just shrugged her shoulders and continued as if nothing had happened, whistling her upbeat song once more after a short while. Neji remained motionless and silent, and he exhaled with relief as Anko disappeared from view. He understood how women handled perverts, but Mitarashi Anko was well renowned for her novel approaches. The majority of them include a castration, some poison, and a kunai. Still, Neji was relieved that the Jonin with the trench coat was no longer around. On the other hand, Neji shivered when he felt the cold metal of a kunai on his cheek and felt his blood run cold when he felt a hand grab onto his shoulder. A whispery, alluring voice sounded in his ear. Well, seems like a little Hyuga is being naughty. Mind telling me why you're hiding in the bushes near the girls' bathroom? The speaker asked. Nyeho turned his head robotically, and the smiling face of Mitarashi Anko met his eyes. Neji swallowed and blurted out the first thing that came to him. Igniting my inner flames of youth? Neji thought to himself shortly after, and Anko just stared at him in confusion. The other villagers stared at Guy and Lee in confusion as they abruptly stopped in the middle of the street on the other side of Konoha. Yosh. Another youthful individual has decided to embrace the flames of youth, was a loud shout that Guy let fall as he fell to his knees. Lee was crying tears of happiness next to him. Yosh Guy. Sensei. I seek out till I find this youthful person, and if I cannot find him I will do 500 pushes, and if I cannot do that I run 500 laps around Konoha, and if I cannot do that, I shall perform 500 sit UPS. Lee you youthful knows no bounds. I shall help you in your search. Guy, Sensei. Lee, Guy, Sensei. Lee, Guy, Sensei. Just as the two shinobi in green jumpsuits formed a sunset behind them, they suddenly hugged. The Konoha villagers were forced to see it, and they screamed in terror and horror. A villager cried out, scratching at his eyes, Kami. Sama. My eyes. With eyes like eggs, another villager cried out, my eyes. My eyes. They burn. The other villagers fell to the ground, trembling and twitching, their mouths frothing at the mouths. Neji blinked, wondering absent-mindedly why he thought he was in charge of sending different people to the hospital. Anko, meanwhile, just gave him a confused look of horror and shock. The purple-haired Kunoichi started to pull on the kunai, saying, Dear Kami. Sama, it's begun. Guy has begun spreading his youth. I refuse to have more guys around. So the only way I can think of that will turn you back to normal, would be to torture you until you come back to your senses. She said. Wait. Guy. Sensei didn't infect with his youth. Just let me explain. Neji shuddered, almost pleading. Ank gave him a long, fixed look before giving him a small nod. She took the kunai from his cheek, but in case he tried to flee, she held a firm hold on his shoulder. Neji reluctantly and begrudgingly started explaining to the purple-haired Jonin his assignment from Hiyashi to watch Hinata and Ino and to thwart any scheme they might devise to split Naruto and his fiancée apart. Anko simply raised an eyebrow and tried to give the impression that she wasn't interested during the whole explanation. But her demeanor revealed her true feelings as she focused intently on the Hyuga. After explaining everything, Anko just stared at Neji, which caused Neji to swallow a little. But Anko's smile proved to be unfounded and his fears vanished. So, based on what I'm seeing, you might need some help. I'm willingly to offer my services, for a price. She said. Neji asked, giving her a wary look, what type of price? How much money do you make? Asked Anko, smiling. Neji gasped. Enough to pay for hotel for several weeks. Why? The smile on the purple-haired Jonin's face grew bigger and bigger until it almost split. That should be enough to cover you hospital bills. Neji blinked in perplexity, wondering what she was discussing. What do you mean? Neji inquired as he gradually retreated. You see, I recently came up with this idea and new torture methods. She pouted, her eyes glistening with fake tears. But there hasn't been anyone for me to torture for the past 2 months. No missing nins or bandits for me to torture, so understandably, it's been quiet. It's gotten to the point where Ibiki began sending people on leave. Sadly, I was one of them. I haven't tortured anything in over a month, that 1,000,000 years for me. She roared. So how about it? I help you, and you let me try some new torture techniques on you. What torture techniques we talking about? Neji asked, looking a little pale. Oh, nothing. Just some poison. Some snakes. A rubber duck. What's the rubber duck for? All she could reply with was a big smile. Was this really worth it? Neji swallowed. Was he prepared to endure this woman's torture in order to spy on Ino and Hinata for whatever scheme they were hatching? He thought of it as he looked at Anko, but he narrowed his eyes at the slight shake of her shoulders. Raising an eyebrow in his mind, he took a closer look at her. Was her lip being bit? You were joking, weren't you? Neji scowled. In response, Anko started laughing uncontrollably. Haha. You should have seen your face. I don't think I've ever seen a Hyuga scared. It was priceless. Neji gave the Tokubetsu Jonin a small twitch. He kept staring at her as she laughed, and then she got up and wiped away a fictitious tear. Oh man, that's one for the textbooks. Now about that help you were asking for. Neji jerked once more. When had he called for assistance? Since he couldn't remember asking her for assistance. Anko grinned broadly and said, I can be persuaded to help. That is if you pay for 2 months' worth of dango. Neji quivered. What? Was the woman in error? Despite being an adult, she behaved like a complete child. However, he was a Hyuga, and from an early age, Hyugas are taught self-control and maturity. It was instilled in Hyugas to be superior to others. Hold on. That sounded a little conceited. Neji gave a blink. Alright, perhaps he should spend some time away from other Hyugas. Why are you so willing to help Midarashi-san? Neji responded. Anko just kept staring at Neji before breaking into a smile. Neji quivered at the name, Gaki, asking, does it matter, Gaki? My reasons are my own, and mine alone. I'm offering help you obviously need, and that is all that should matter to you. Neji gave Anko a fierce look. What possible motivations might she have? What was the reason behind her actions? What could her intentions possibly be? Was there a hint of rage visible in her eyes? Neji felt his head throb slightly at the thought. He sighed. You could still get a headache from Naruto even when he wasn't around. He gazed into Anko's, and he gave a silent nod. With a smile, Anko wrapped her arm around Neji's shoulders. She exclaimed, smiling cheekily, "This is the beginning of a beautiful friendship." Neji let out a sigh. Just. How did he get into this situation? With the leaves of the trees rustling in the breeze and the moon beaming brightly into the clearing, the scene was picturesque. Millions of stars littered the night sky, forming and dispersing into constellations. A figure wearing a full body cloak moved slowly through the clearing, the darkness of his hood covering his face. The figure came to a sudden stop and whirled around, adjusting his hood slightly as he scanned the area for the thing or someone that had startled him. The person just dismissed it as him being paranoid when nothing occurred. As he turned to continue his journey, he was confronted by an orange mask featuring a spiral design. The person wearing the cloak leapt back and quickly withdrew a kunai. Fearful of any movement from the masked man, the figure fixed his intense gaze on him. The man in the cloak examined the man behind the mask carefully, and he recognized the black cloak with the red clouds right away. He tightened his hold on his kunai, wondering what this shadowy group of missing ranked nins could possibly want with him. He was unable to possess anything that would pique their interest. Could he? Yar. The man in a mask said, "There's no need for that kunai, you know. I'm just here to ask a question." The cloaked figure did not have time to react before his kunai vanished into a swirling vortex. The person in the cloak leapt backwards instantly and made multiple hand signals. But before he could complete the final hand sign, he was thrown across the clearing like a rag doll when someone grabbed hold of his hands tightly. As I said before, I just want to ask a question. Now are you going to allow me to ask it, or do I have to kill you? Tobi murmured. The figure in the cloak asked, his voice a little childish and slightly raspy, "Who are you?" Tobi mockingly waved his finger back and forth, saying, No. I'm asking the questions, remember? You are meant to answer them. The person in the cloak snarled, "All right, ask your question." Tobi laughed. "Thank you. Now tell me. Are you Hiroku of Konoha? The same Hiroku that is reported dead? What do you know of me? And how did you find me?" "No one knows I live," the cloaked figure questioned, tense. Tobi laughed and made the cloaked Hiroku clench his fists, saying, "I know many things, Hiroku. Chan. I know that you are talentless shinobi. I know that the only reason you're powerful right now is because of the various bloodlines in your body. Bloodlines that you've stolen." When Tobi continued making fun of him, Hiroku threw a kunai at the disguised Uchiha. Tobi cocked his head, allowing the kunai to whiz by him. He thought to himself, his Sharingan glimmering with amusement, "Oh? So you want to fight? Very well." The wind abruptly brushing against Hiroku's face as Tobi's face collided with his was the only warning he had. Hiroku stammered, then vanished in a flash of light. He reappeared a few feet away, surveying the surroundings in search of the masked shinobi. She spun around as soon as he felt a hand grab his shoulder. A reverse grip on a kunai. He tried impaling the kunai into the man's skull through the mask, but it just phased through him. Hiroku's cloak caused his eyes to widen. Tobi smiled from beneath his mask. Uchiha, wearing a mask, threw Hiroku over his shoulder and attempted to kick the man wearing a cloak. Hiroku moved aside, but Tobi had already made the necessary hand gestures in anticipation of this. Tobi's mask erupted into a ball of flame that struck the cloaked shinobi. Hiroku pulled his cloak off in a panic as it burned to ashes. At last, Hiroku's features were exposed to the public after his cloak was lifted. Pinkish red eyes and short white hair that is spiky. He was dressed primarily in white, with white bandages covering his arms, legs, and lower face. Tobi laughed, enjoying the sight of Hiroku. "I am going to kill you." Hiroku hissed in a low voice as he glared at the masked Uchiha. Yar. So violent." Tobi laughed. "And here I was about to give you the offer of a lifetime." Hiroku arched an eyebrow and said, "An offer?" with a hint of curiosity in his voice. Tobi grinned. "Hook. In line. And the sinker." "Yes." You see, your special abilities would be well utilized within the ranks of Akatsuki. Of course, what type of deal would this be if I didn't offer you something you wanted? There is only one thing I desire, Hiroku said in a menacing tone. Tobi scowled briefly under his mask before a smirk replaced it. Ah yes, the Sharingan of Hitaki Kakashi. With a slight widening of his eyes, Hiroku regarded Tobi cautiously. How did you know? Tobi said incoherently. As I said, I know many, many things. Hiroku, tsked, as he looked at, I'm not really interested in joining your group, and besides. The only reason why you would even be trying to recruit me is because one of your members has betrayed you or they're dead. Besides, you want to use my abilities to your benefit. Am I right? Tobi twitched his shoulders and then threw back his head, laughing. Hiroku remained silent, but his eyes narrowed in confusion. After a few moments, Tobi finally stopped laughing, and he spoke with a humorous tone. Do not flatter yourself, Hiroku. San. You may believe that the reason we want you in our ranks is because of your abilities, or because one of our members is dead. But the truth is, you couldn't be even farther from the truth. The only reason I'm even speaking to you now is because you were the easiest to find. There are plenty of missing nins around the elemental nations. Tobi said with a smile on his face. You are far from the strongest, Hiroku. San. I would place you at high A. Rank borderline S. Rank. You are probably the weakest of all the missing nins in regards to of Konoha missing nins. Even Uchiha Itachi, who is decades younger than you, is stronger than you. And all because you lack talent. And because you lack talent, you resorted to stealing bloodlines from various other shinobi, and now you want to get your hands on Hitaki's Sharingan. Tobi gave an arrogant little laugh. You were so pathetic and talentless that you borrowed power from prominent shinobi. The power you were using borrowed, and I find it fitting that your power will now be borrowed by Akatsuki. Willingly or not. Hiroku clenched his jaw beneath his bandages. I have my own agendas. And joining Akatsuki is not one of them. Tobi said in a menacing tone, just inches from Hiroku's ears. That's too bad. Because as I said, willing or not. But should you join willingly, I can assure that you will obtain Hitaki's Sharingan. Hiroku noticed that, but the missing nin with white hair continued to glare at the masked Uchiha. What? With a tilt of his head, Tobi asked, Ah, that got your attention, didn't it? With a tone of amusement. Yes, should you decide to join the Akatsuki willingly, then I will personally deliver you Kakashi's Sharingan. Hiroku yelled, and if I don't decide to join? Then I will break your mind, and leave you as a mindless husk that won't be able to take a shit without my directions. Tobi murmured. Hiroku considered his choices. One way or another, he could keep trying to get his hands on Kakashi's Sharingan on his own. He was confident he could do it, but first he had to deal with some annoying Konoha nin. But if he joined Akatsuki, he would have one of their members as at least some backup. In the event that the rumors he had heard were accurate, then they operate in pairs and, barring emergencies involving personal matters, the two partners are always together. He looked at Tobi, knowing full well that even though he was confident he could break free from any genjutsu he could conjure up, there was always a chance he wouldn't be able to. In the end, Hiroku chose the less hazardous and more likely to succeed course. Hiroku eventually responded, very well, I'll join Akatsuki in exchange for Kakashi's Sharingan. Tobi, disguised as Uchiha, smiled beneath his mask and said, I knew you would see things my way. Welcome to Akatsuki, Hiroku. San. During your time with us, you will my partner. Let us work well together, Hiroku. San. He also extended his hand for a handshake. Hiroku shook Tobi's hand firmly after taking it slowly. And with that, the ranks of Akatsuki have gained another member. After reversing direction, Tobi headed towards the forest with Hiroku trailing closely behind. It's time to visit Naruto. Kun, now that I've persuaded Hiroku to join. I'll go on to the monk boy named Sora after that. And the Kyuubi's chakra that he holds will be mine. With those last words, Tobi vanished into the forest's shadows. A cold wind blew across the clearing, and the moon, now shaped like an eye, appeared to bleed. A ring. Encircling pupil, like Pain's Rinnegan, but it contained 9 tomo, like the Sharingan. But as quickly as the image appeared, it disappeared, leaving only a cold feeling to see us through the night. End of chapter. At last, Tobi has welcomed his newest member. In what ways will the current situation alter? We'll just have to find out, who knows? That entire scene where Orochimaru and Kabuto discuss F43? You could say that Kiba and Akamaru gave me the idea. Why not provide Naruto with a friend as devoted as Akamaru, I reasoned. I'm not sure why Kishimoto abandoned the plan at first, but I think it would have greatly benefited Naruto as he matured. Naturally, F43 and Naruto will cross paths when Naruto visits Orochimaru's lair. And the entire scenario in which Orochimaru created it? That way, it seemed more plausible. Orochimaru did, after all, conduct a lot of experiments. In his numerous hiding places, Konoha likely has dozens, if not hundreds, of experiments that he hasn't yet discovered. Heck, he just demonstrates his increased slyness and cunning. It really surprised me so much that he left Anko in the manner that he did. When I first saw that chapter, I can still clearly recall just staring at the page and asking myself, what the fuck does it take to kill this motherfucker? In any case, I believe that Naruto and his friends still have a lot of experiments to discover. Additionally, we probably won't find out either, given the direction that Naruto is going. I mean, Naruto is almost done. Despite the fact that there are rumors of a new Naruto series. But until I see evidence, I won't believe it. Finally, the omake. My friends and I came up with this idea when we were really bored. Omake. The true reason behind Madara's village exit. Hashirama cried out in pain and desperation, Madara. He cried out through gritted teeth, why? Why did you leave the village? The Shodem Hokage growled and snapped at Madara. Don't play dumb with me, Hashirama. He yelled, you know exactly why I left the village. The Shodem cocked his head to the side as Hashirama blinked in bewilderment. I do? He questioned dutifully. Yes, you do. Madara yelled in response. With a blink, Hashirama considered the scenarios that might have compelled Madara to give up their idyllic childhood. I don't really know why you left the village, Madara. Madara's mouth dropped, but he straightened up quickly and gave Hashirama a scowl. He raised a finger to indicate the Shodem Hokage, who was clenching his teeth so firmly that they sounded like metal scraping metal. He bellowed loudly, you cheated on me with Mito, you son of bitch. At that declaration, the entire forest fell silent, and the shout could be heard for miles around. With his mouth hanging open and his eyes nearly falling out of his sockets, Hashirama stood there, stunned. The Shodem took a few moments to gather himself before opening his mouth to speak. Shing. Only to have the sound of a sword being drawn suddenly cut off. Glaring down at Sharingan, he spun wildly as he stared at Madara, who held a sword above his head. Die, you cheating bastard. Hashirama ducked and watched as the blade sliced through wood like butter. With a swallow, the Shodem took out his own blade. Madara. He exclaimed angrily, can't we talk about this? In response, Madara brought his sword to bear on Hashirama. If I can't have your dick, then I'm cutting it off so one can have it. Madara growled as the Uchiha leader glared into Hashirama's eyes and pushed forward fiercely. Hashirama cried out, holy shit. As Madara tried to chop off his third leg. The Shodem swallowed, wondering what had enraged Madara so much. Ultimately, their relationship never really existed in the first place.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.